main thing is to keep everybody safe. And I always tell the kids, I'm not just talking about your physical safety, I'm talking about your mental health and your mental well-being as well.
All the things you're going to see. And I think what you'll see is
later, but we're just super excited to have you here today.
It was a collective group. We kind of reestablished our mission this year at the school. I think she's here 5 years. Marla.
Do you need a new marker?
No, I'm trying to find my other person. Alright, so it's 64 remainder.
E at the end. Can you look at your word of the day and make sure you have ED? And if you do, circle it.
We're excited for a fun and engaging morning. So who is ready to experience our school and what we call the DV difference? Let's go.
I just want to make sure I give everybody opportunity to fill the green steps so we get into 6P. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. It's good to see everybody. As always, Ms. Concha, let's call this meeting to order exact at straight up 6 p.m., please. All right, moving on to a public hearing. 2.1, convene public hearing pursuant to ARS 15-905 and ARS 15-905Q. Sorry, first one 15-905E3 and ARS 15-905Q for review or revision number 3 to the expenditure budget, including maintenance and operations, district additional assistance, and classroom site fund budgets for fiscal year 2023. All right, that said, I do need a motion to convene this public hearing, please.
I will motion to convene the public hearing.
I'll second. Ms. Concha, we have a motion made by Mrs. Ewing, a second made by myself. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes with 5 yeas. Thank you, board members. Ms. Myers, welcome.
Thank you all. Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the governing board, Dr. Reynolds, colleagues, and community. This evening, I will present information related to the third budget revision for the Peoria Unified School District's operating budget for fiscal year 2023. Tonight, I will review requirements related to budget revisions and highlight the main changes to the maintenance and operations, district additional assistance, and classroom site fund budgets. I will also provide information regarding grants and cash-controlled funds. Stewardship of community resources is one of the 4 perspectives of the district's strategic plan. The annual budget process is part of the strategic perspective to solidify and adhere to effective policies, practices, and accountability for district resources. A public school district must adopt an annual fiscal budget each year by July 15th, and districts can revise their budgets in December and May of the fiscal year. This year, due to the extended legislative session in late June last summer for fiscal year 2023, Peoria Unified's first budget revision actually took place in August, and that occurred on August 25th. The Arizona Department of Education is not requiring the district to revise our operating budget. The budget revision is being presented tonight to allow the district to recognize average daily membership and similar budget adjustments, as well as budget to actual expenditure adjustments prior to our June 30th fiscal year end. I would like to thank our budget analysts, Veronica Fabella and Araceli Angel, for their assistance with the May budget revision. The annual expenditure budget for maintenance and operations, or M&O, is the fund where most of the regular education and special education day-to-day expenditures take place throughout the district. M&O expenditures include salaries and benefits, supplies, utilities, transportation, and other operational expenditures not of a capital nature. In this budget revision, the M&O budget is being increased just over $2.1 million, which is a result of ADM add-on changes, including the opportunity weight and an ADE correction to the M&O override budget amount. District additional assistance funds can be used for capital expenditures that include furniture, athletic equipment, textbooks, instructional aids, computers, and software as an example. In this budget revision, the adopted district additional assistance budget is being increased $62,739 due to prior year interest. The Classroom Site Fund supports base pay and performance pay for certified classroom teachers and other eligible staff as defined in statute. The budget in this fund is being increased just over $1.4 million to reflect prior year budget capacity that we are now recognizing in fiscal year 2023. The third expenditure budget revision also includes budgeted amounts for non-levy cash-controlled funds. On this slide, there are 6 examples of cash-controlled budgets. There have been minor adjustments to adjacent ways and our bond fund from the second budget revision in December. Our food and nutrition budget has increased $4.2 million to reflect actual expenditures as well as a pending indirect cost transfer out. as well as our federal and state grants have increased $2 million to recognize several new grants from state agencies and municipalities that the district has received in recent months that are a result of final COVID-19 relief funds being expended by those granting agencies. And last, administration has previously shared that Peoria Unified has ESSER reimbursement grant funding in place for fiscal year 2023 for eligible expenses through June 30th, 2023 and June 30th, 2024. $7.1 million of ESSER 2 grant funding and $21 million of ESSER 3 grant funding was included in the adopted budget last summer and remains at the same amount in the revised fiscal year 2023 expenditure budget. Based on information provided, administration recommends that the governing board approve budget revision number 3 for fiscal year 23 as presented during the action portion of the agenda later in the meeting. This concludes the presentation. At this time, as is the case with all public hearings, the community can offer comments. I am also available to answer questions from the governing board regarding the budget revision. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Yeah, we don't have any slips filled out tied to this line item, but board members, questions, comments? Ms. Hill?
Yes, actually, I just want to state for the record that I personally cannot approve the budget just due to the fact that I don't think that PUSD actually supports the girls in our district, and so I don't feel that it's appropriate to put money into a school district that does not support half of its population. So that's just my comment on that.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Dr. Sorensen?
No, sir.
Yeah. Mrs. Rooks?
No comment.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. Mrs. Ewing?
I don't have any questions. Thank you for preparing that.
Yeah, I don't have any questions, comments. I know this is a line item that we will vote on later on in this agenda, but no, I appreciate the information as always. Thank you. All right, moving on to adjournment of public hearing. 3.1, consideration to adjourn public hearing. I do need a motion to adjourn this public hearing.
I will motion that we adjourn the public hearing.
I'll second that. Ms. Concho, we have a motion made by Mrs. Rooks, a second by myself. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes with 5 yeas. Thank you, board members. All right, moving on to opening exercises. 4.1, moment of silence and our Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Reynolds, I don't think I've ever asked you to guide us through this exercise, so would you be so kind to do so this evening? Thank you. All right, moving on to section 5, address agenda. Address agenda and consider adoption or recommend changes. Ms. Hill, any changes you'd like to make to this evening's agenda?
No, thank you.
Dr. Sorensen?
No, sir.
Mrs. Rooks?
No, thank you.
All right. Mrs. Ewing?
No, thank you.
All right, I don't have any changes either. That said, I do need a motion to approve this evening's agenda as presented.
I will motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second that. Ms. Concho, I have a motion made by Mrs. Ewing, a second made by myself. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes with 5 yeas. Thank you, board members. All right, moving on to recognition 6.1. Ms. Airy, welcome.
Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds, and guests. As hopefully everyone knows, it is National Teacher Appreciation Week, and we want our teachers to know that they are cared for and supported each and every day. And this week seems like an opportune time to pause and to focus on their tremendous efforts. I want to acknowledge and celebrate the more than 1,500 educators who help us achieve our district's mission daily and do so with the utmost compassion and skill. While we don't have time to talk about each and every one of them tonight, I would like to highlight just a couple of our all-stars. Last year, our Raymond S. Kellis Leadership Award recipient for excellence in teaching was someone who truly embodied our district's mission. For those of you who may not be familiar, the Raymond S. Kellis Leadership Award is named after a former Peoria Unified superintendent who was well respected in our community, and we would liken this award to a Lifetime Achievement Award. Last year's winner was Teresa Maitner, who for more than 2 decades has served the students of Peoria Unified across many different campuses, but is currently a teacher at Park Ridge Elementary. She's known for the pride she has in all that she does, and she works to ensure that her students achieve their full potential. Parents share that they are grateful for Mrs. Maitner instilling positive values like kindness, integrity, and responsibility, and of course, excellence in academics. As a Raymond S. Kellis Leadership Award winner, Mrs. Maitner has been added to the list of the best of the best. And from a veteran to a rookie, this year we celebrated an outstanding Rookie of the Year, Thomas Nelly, an Arise teacher from Ironwood High School. He has made a huge impact at Ironwood High School in only 2 short years. As a preview of what we will be highlighting about him next week at our Pride of Peoria Awards, we want to share he coaches 3 different sports on campus, has gone above and beyond by oftentimes loaning his own personal athletic equipment to students who couldn't afford it. He's also given to other athletes in order to support them and care for them. And you know how cared for he is when during our prize patrol, when we go out to honor our teachers, when there is a gym filled with students there to surprise him with chants and cheers. Our campuses are full of countless examples of teachers that really do a tremendous amount of work to support our students each and every day. And I'd like to pause, and if there are any teachers in the room that feel comfortable and want to stand for recognition, we would love to honor you tonight. Our teachers truly are a heartbeat within our district that go above and beyond each and every day through tutoring, innovative instruction, the parent communication, and even assisting with supporting their peers through professional development. Teachers, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for the dedication you have put into making sure that every student every day is prepared to shape tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Airy. All right, moving on to 6.2, board comments. Ms. Hill?
Yes, actually wanted to remind everyone what our motto for our school is, which is every student, every day, except for the girls. This was made quite evident to our district by the board's decision-making last time that we met. So I just wanted to clarify that it is every student, every day, except for the girls. I would also like to go on to say, for if we go on sinning deliberately after receiving the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins. Proverbs 28:13.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Dr. Swanson?
Yeah, I obviously want to give a shout out to all the educators during this week, but I can tell you as a school leader, I try to make every day Teacher Appreciation Day along with the community and who we serve. So thank you so much for doing the work out there.
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. Mrs. Rooks?
God is greater than the giants that you faced. 1 John 4:4. I want to say thank you to Mrs. Hammer, the principal at Cactus High School. She had a tour this morning with me. She walked me around the campus, and I enjoyed seeing the culinary program, robotics program, talking to the teacher of that robotics program, and the ceramics class. I was very impressed with all of seeing those things and that there is those opportunities for the students. I also want to shout out to our school nurses, because I know this week is also School Nurse Week, and I know that they do a lot of work at the schools with the children. I also want to wish all of the moms in the district and the community, because this weekend is Mother's Day. So thank you to all the moms out there for everything that you do for your families. I also want to say thank you to the teachers in the district who are educating children, and to the teachers who have reached out in support behind the girls with the bathroom situation. I hear you. And I am deeply shocked and saddened with this district and the fellow board members in not adopting a policy regarding bathrooms, especially with so many girls and parents who have been very upset with the situation allowing boys into the girls' bathrooms. And I also want to apologize to the parents of the district for the email that was sent to you labeling your girls and boys as cisgender. It saddens me that the district and the fellow board members' motto right now seems to be every student, every day, except the girls.
Thank you, Ms. Rooks. Mrs. Ewing.
Thank you. So I want to say thank you to the Met. I was out there, actually, my husband and I, they reached out to us and asked if we would be part of the judges that get to review all of the students' projects that they've done. And so that was really wonderful being out at the Met, getting an opportunity to see how each of those students have worked with various different professionals to put together problems, to put together solutions for real world problems, and it was really wonderful to see. So I appreciate all those students who were out there, and I appreciate being a part of that. I got an opportunity to head out to Zuni Hills and see their teacher appreciation campuses. They do 2 weeks of teacher appreciation there, so that was really wonderful to see and take part in. I got an opportunity to head out to Park Ridge and be part of the senior walk there. So that was very wonderful to take part in. And then today I got to be part of the senior awards over at Peoria High School. I do want to say thank you to all of the teachers who work tirelessly out there, and to all of our nurses as well, as I know they do a lot to keep all of our kids healthy and so forth. So I appreciate that, and happy Mother's Day as well, a little bit ahead of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Yeah, I just have a couple, on Tuesday I had the opportunity and really the honor to hand out the Outstanding Cadet Awards at the Cactus High School Air Force Junior ROTC Awards ceremony. It was just very inspiring to see the leadership and all the accomplishments, of our young scholars, and to see the smiles on their faces and the look that they had, just exuding a lot of confidence, as they continue along beyond the walls of Peoria Unified to navigate their path in a way that, again, in a confident way, but with adaptability as well. So. Big shout out to Lieutenant Colonel Zamora, Chief Nelson, and Principal Hammer. I know Zamora and Chief Nelson, they're the ones who, are the direct connect with our ROTC program there at Cactus, but Principal Hammer, I know she's a huge supporter, and, whatever they need, the answer is always yes, and we'll figure it out. So I want to thank her as well for continuing to support just such a great program that we have throughout our district. And again, lastly, in the midst of Teacher Appreciation Week, just appreciate all of our teachers who wake up every day to lift up others, who wake up every day to make sure that our young scholars are inspiring them with hope, growing and developing them to just really realized individuals, again, who leave our sites in a way that they're confident to navigate their own path. So thank you very much for what you do every day, throughout Peoria Unified. Appreciate it. And that is all I have this evening. But I do want to reiterate, Mrs. Rooks, you brought up Mother's Day. Thank you for that. My wife is on travel, so we won't be able to celebrate Mother's Day together. But when she gets back, we'll certainly do so. So she is obviously the one that makes me a better person every day and drives me to be the best version of myself each day as well. So happy Mother's Day to all. All right, moving on to 6.3, superintendent comments. Dr. Reynolds. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, President Sandoval, Governing Board, Cabinet, and our guests. Yes, it's National Teacher Appreciation Week. I also want to send out my personal appreciation to all of our teachers, all of our staff who are out there supporting our students every single day. But as our board mentioned, yesterday was National School Nurses Day, and I'd like to personally thank all of our school nurses for everything they do to keep our students and staff healthy. Their work is so critical to the academic achievement and the safety of our district, and I'm grateful to each of them. I had an opportunity to thank them personally yesterday as they came together to celebrate the work that they've done this year. So that was really exciting. Our high school students who participate in Future Business Leaders of America recently competed at the Arizona State Leadership Conference in Tucson. At the conference, 45 Peoria Unified High School students qualified to compete at the National Leadership Conference this June. Peoria Unified FBLA chapters partnered with Grand Canyon University to help them prepare for this competition and got feedback from GCU business students and professors. And so we want to say a big thank you to Grand Canyon University for this mentorship effort, and we wish our students the best of luck as they represent us at nationals. I'm also proud to share that Peoria Unified has 70 high school students receiving their art proficiency seal for the 2022-2023 school year from the Arizona Department of Education. This is the highest number of students on record to receive this seal, and it's also a 40% increase from last year. Excuse me. So we're really excited for that. These students have achieved artistic proficiency across various art forms such as dance, choir, band, visual arts, and theater. And for their achievement, they will have a special seal added to their high school diploma, which is a wonderful honor. Peoria Flex Academy recently hosted an event with nonprofit Borderlands Powwow to distribute 365 produce boxes in our local community. That equates to 25,550 pounds of produce to create 9,291 nutritious meals. This was made possible through the 70 students and community volunteers from Peoria Flex Academy, Sunrise Mountain, Centennial, Cactus, Peoria High, and the Met Professional Academy. So we want to thank everyone who supported this work. We really appreciate them. Our 2022-23 District Elementary basketball champions have officially been named in the Copper Conference. Oakwood Elementary for boys basketball, Zuni Hills Elementary for girls basketballs have been named winners, and champions in the Turquoise Conference are Cheyenne Elementary boys and girls basketball teams. What an exciting conclusion to our elementary sports school year, and congratulations to all of our champions. And tomorrow is May 12th is National School Communicators Day, and we want to recognize all of our apologize for that. All of our school communicators who work tirelessly to ensure meaningful parental and community involvement through communication, and incredibly appreciative. Nice. That was my daughter. We'll have a conversation when we get home. She's going to tell me, turn your phone off. I'm incredibly appreciative of our award-winning communications team. So thank you, Ms. Ari, and your whole team. And thank you for my daughter for calling me during a board meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. All right, moving on to Section 7, public comment. Request to address the governing board regarding matters not included on the agenda. As always, we will spend 30 minutes on this line item, 3 minutes per speaker. We do have a pretty good stack here, so we'll just pull from the top and get through as many as we can. As a public rules of conduct, the board president shall keep control of the meeting and require the speakers and the audience to refrain from abusive or profane remarks, disruptive outbursts, applause, protests, or other conduct which disrupts or interferes with the orderly conduct of the business of the meeting. Personal attacks on board members, staff, or members of the public are not allowed. It is inappropriate to utilize a public hearing, the public comment segment, or any other agenda items for the purpose of making political speeches. Engaging in such conduct and failing to cease such conduct upon request of the presiding officer will be grounds for ending a speaker's time at the podium or for the removal of any disruptive person from the meeting room at the direction of the board president. That said, I'm looking forward to welcoming everybody's voices who are able to get a spot this evening. And this first public comment comes from Brianna Cooney.
We're here to support you. You go right ahead. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
I feel very upset by the situation, that the fact that boys are going to be allowed to go into the girls' bathrooms. I don't think that they should be allowed to be in girls' bathrooms because it's just, if they're not a girl, then they shouldn't be in there. If that's how it's meant to be, then it shouldn't be changed, but it's going to be changed anyway because opinions don't matter for me.
Thank you, Ms. Cooney. All right, next public comment comes from Ms. Ava Snyder.
Once I start speaking, does my time start?
Yes.
Okay. So, I'm a student of Liberty High School. I'm a graduating senior this year, and I would like to comment on the last board meeting, which considers trans bathroom rights. And I would like to refer to the mantra, every student, every day. And I believe an integral part of this, protecting our girls, protecting every student every day, is protecting the girls that happen to be trans. Currently, as the board members stated last meeting, there's no record of sexual misconduct in bathrooms at the hands of a transgender girl. It has never happened, and these trans kids are being targeted due to their appearance and looks rather than their actions or their tangible personality and existence. I support the board members' previous decision to keep in place no bathroom policy, because if we want to protect Peoria Unified's school district's girls, then we need to primarily protect the trans girls first, because they're the ones most at risk of sexual assault, mental health struggles, and if you look at the statistics, you will see this. Now, I know this is a very controversial topic, but I believe when a topic is controversial, we need to focus on listening to the students' voices and to the science. And I believe that represents that there is no danger at hand, and that only that there is a need for students to be educated. And I believe this is a relevant quote: "Accept one another then, just as Christ accepted you, in order to bring praise to God." Romans 15:7. and judge not, and you will not be judged. Luke 6:37. So I believe that these comments from the Bible apply to this. Judgment should be out of the question when it comes to these children who are at risk, who are at danger, and who are very, very, very vulnerable. These children are very vulnerable, and we need to protect them. And protecting them means ensuring their rights to safety, especially bathroom safety. And whichever policy you adopt, I implore you to consider one that protects trans girls as much as it protects girls who are born girls. And I believe it is very important to apply higher ethics and morals to this, just as the teachings of Christ and just as many other teachings represent. Accept one another, do not judge one another, and you will not be judged. And acceptance will win over everything else.
Thank you, Ms. Schneider. All right, next public comment comes from Ms. Emma Heiser.
I'm a freshman in this district, and since it's Teacher Appreciation Week, I would just like to thank some of my teachers for what they do. For example, Mr. Doyle, Ms. Cooper, and Mrs. Spooner, and a lot more, and also my counselor, Mrs. Jans. I appreciate all of my current and past teachers for helping me become the person I am today and helping me learn so many of the things I know now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heiser. Next public comment comes from Ms. Cindy Heiser. Let me make sure that Ms. Wright has a slip filled out first. All right, Ms. Wright. Sorry, I had to filter through a few. Welcome.
Good evening, President Sandoval, board members, and Dr. Reynolds. I want to start out by thanking my children's teachers for Teacher Appreciation Week. At Park Ridge Elementary, my fourth graders teacher, Ms. Sullivan, my sixth graders teachers, Mrs. Yamauchi, Mrs. Mason, and Ms. McGahee, as well as tech teacher, Mrs. Wynn, and band teacher, Mrs. Melkin. A big thank you to art teacher, Mrs. Lujan, librarians, Mrs. Heiser and Mrs. Herr, music and ukulele teacher, Miss Walker, and PE teachers, Mrs. Escobar and Mr. Mooney, for teaching both of my girls. Thank you to my son's teachers at Sunrise Mountain High School, Mr. Wills, Mr. Pavia, Mr. Plombon, and Mrs. Malmos. My children's educations are richer because they have all of you doing an amazing job each and every day. It takes a village. I would like to thank President Sandoval, Mrs. Ewing, and Dr. Sorensen for keeping the district's foundations of data-driven decision-making and good stewardship of the district's financial resources as part of how they vote. By voting to not have administration start drafting discriminatory bathroom policies, you have saved the district thousands of dollars in lawyers' fees. Peoria Unified is not above federal Title VII and Title IX legislation. One board member stated in the last meeting that they are willing to put Peoria Unified at ground zero and take it all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has already spoken. On June 15th, 2020, in the case of Bostock versus Clayton County, the Supreme Court ruled that sex discrimination under Title VII encompasses discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and transgender status. After the Bostock decision, several more federal courts reached the same conclusion to Title IX, protecting transgender students from discrimination on the basis of gender identity. Please reference the United States Department of Justice Title IX manual online like I did to fact check. Instead of public comments and social media posts demanding discriminatory policies, We could start working together, brainstorming solutions that work for all students. I would also like to thank the Budget Committee and our CFO, Ms. Myers, for the presentation last week. Thank you for continuing to keep increasing employee salaries at the forefront of your decision-making. At the last meeting, a board member stated concerns about the increase of teachers' extra duty pay from $25 an hour to $35. Ms. Myers pointed out that if you take the average teacher's salary, break it down to an hourly rate, it would be $37 per hour. Tell me what job asks employees to work more than 40 hours a week at an hourly rate less than their regular rate. When I discussed this issue with my friends who happen to work in healthcare, their comment was that they wouldn't even drive into the hospital parking lot for less than time and a half if they'd already worked their hours. Thank you for this consideration. Peoria Unified is a great place to send my children to school, regardless of what one board member says. I choose Peoria Unified.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Next public comment comes from Ms. Christina, I'm going to say Tube, T-U-B-B-E. Tubby. You know what? You did. I apologize. It is in parens. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, President Sandoval, governing board members, Dr. Reynolds. My name is Christina Tubby. I come to you as a member of the Peoria community, a parent, and an educator in the Peoria Unified School District. As a community member, I want to preface, I do not put my politics into my classroom, into my speech, into anything. Nobody knows which side I'm on. I see both sides, but just as a community member, I want to say if you're not happy with something that is put into a law, it needs to go to a legislative level, not on a board level. And as parents, there's the beautiful choice of school that Arizona allows us to have. And our schools are following laws just like community members need to follow laws. So if people are not happy with one school, they have the right and the choice to leave. Or just an idea, the district could choose to take out all bathrooms and make individual restrooms for one-time, one-student use, which would be extremely costly, in case you're wondering. But while we've all been hung up on one issue within the district, there are several positive things that are happening. Vistancia had a wonderful snowball that involved families, and we had an incredible family fun competition. If you don't know me or my classroom, we strive on competition. We had a wonderful drama production, Shrek Jr., in March. And we survived a blizzard by the Arizona standards of students up at Outdoor Ed. There were many calls. I'm sure the district also received them. We had a wonderful Arts in the Park celebration with our choir, our art, and our band teacher, who's remarkable and retiring this year. Fifth grade had a float parade that was bigger than Macy's Day Parade. We had a pastries with parents that celebrated each of our parents. And we have a brand new to Arizona principal take over and really embark a huge positive change, uniting our parents, our community, our children, and the staff at Vistancia. So please don't just stop at one issue. Look at the whole district as a whole. And I do have a comment on 10.3. You said I don't, but I did put in a slip. Just saying.
On the, okay, got it. Yeah, we have it separated by line. Thank you. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, Ms. Tubby, thank you. All right, next public comment comes from Ms. Tabitha Wall.
Good evening. It's my first rodeo, so bear with me. My name is Tabitha, and I am a PUSD parent. I'm here to speak today pleading with our elected board to hold up to the district code of every student every day. ASBA states that policy adoption is one of the board's chief responsibilities. Unfortunately, 3 members of our presiding board have made it abundantly clear that they are continuously going to exercise every loophole possible to continue to push off or vote not to do their duty of passing policy. I'm here as a parent to exercise the Arizona School Board Association's policy BGB, which states that the content of a policy may originate with the member of a board, the superintendent, a staff member, a parent, a student, consultant, civic group, or any resident of the district. I have in my hand a physical privacy policy drafted with the intent to have the board review and follow the BG policy process. The purpose of this policy is to provide structure, safety, and security to every student, every day, in accordance to your mantra. For all PUSD students and parents, what this means is that the board should follow the protocol of a careful and orderly review of the policy which I am submitting. Do I have permission for someone to grab this, or?
Yeah, you can hand it to Ms. Contra there
Can
when
I do
you're
it
done.
at the end? Okay,
Yep.
thank you. The board is now responsible for referring this proposal to the administration of the district for a detailed review prior to any recommendations being made. This issue will not go away. I think we've made that abundantly clear. In accordance with ASBA's BG policy, the acceptance of this policy proposal requires the review outlined above. This has to be a discussion, and a decision has to be made. This is not an issue to be tossed into the trash without a review. Please show the voters like me in our district that voting for you was not a mistake. It's time.
Thank you. Next public comment comes from Ms. Corrine Haynes.
Okay, Governing Board, President Sandoval, Superintendent Mr. Reynolds, I am going to go ahead and read what the policy states. The purpose, in recognition of student physical privacy rights and the need to ensure student safety and maintain school discipline, this policy is enacted to advise school site staff and administration regarding their duties in relation to use of restrooms, locker rooms, showers, similar school facilities, and school-related overnight accommodations where persons may be in a state of undress or in the presence of others. Definition: sex means a person's immutable biological sex, either male or female, as objectively determined by anatomy and/or genetics existing at the time of birth. Evidence of a person's biological sex includes, but is not limited to, any government-issued identification document that accurately reflects a person's sex as listed on the person's original birth certificate. Number 3, policy. A, use of school facilities and overnight accommodations. Number 1, notwithstanding any other board policy, every public school restroom, locker room, and shower room accessible by multiple persons at the same time shall be designated for use by male persons only or female persons only. Number 2, in all public schools in this district, restrooms, locker rooms, and showers that are designated for one sex shall be used only by members of that sex, and no person shall enter a restroom, locker room, or shower that is designated for one sex unless he or she is a member of that sex. Number 3, in any other public school facility or setting where a person may be in a state of undress in the presence of others, school personnel should provide separate, private areas designated for use by persons based on their sex, and no person shall enter these private areas unless he or she is a member of the designated sex. May not finish it, but you'll get the idea. 4, during any school authorized activity or event where persons share overnight lodging, no person shall share a bedroom or multiple occupancy restroom with a member of the opposite sex unless such persons are members of the same family, i.e. parent, guardian, child, sibling, or grandparent. This section shall not apply to a person who enters a facility designated for the opposite sex for custodial maintenance purposes or to render emergency medical or during a natural disaster. And I'm going to stop there because my time is almost out, but I just want the people at home viewing this, the people here, to know if we just had one more person on this
Thank you, Ms.
board
Haynes. I appreciate your time.
with common sense, we
Thank
would
you.
not be where we are right
Ms.
now.
Haynes, thank you. Next public comment comes from, I'm going to go with Jerry Vance. Is that correct? Is it Jerry?
Hi, school board. My children are adults now, but I still have grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And I cannot believe that I have to come every 2 weeks and beg for you to not allow biological boys into girls' bathrooms. It's shameful. Please, please, please make a new policy that we don't have to put up with this for our grandchildren and children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vance. Next public comment comes from Ms. Becky Smith. Okay, let me just see if she has a slip filled out. Oh, she does. Ms. Graham, welcome.
My name is Lindsay Graham, and I'm here to address the removal of safety, security, and protection for girls in their private facilities in Peoria. We are the majority, and you are an elected official. This community does not agree with your refusal to protect their daughters. Your job is to answer to us, and that is the point of public comment, isn't it? To hear what this community has to say and take it into consideration. Are you actually listening to the people that pay your paycheck? Because we'd be happy to take it from you if you refuse to protect our girls. Besides Heather Rooks and Rebecca Hill, the rest of you think it's okay for boys to use girls' restrooms and locker rooms. You think it's completely safe and honorable to be inclusive and accepting at the risk of girls' safety. Well, I hope you're right, and you better hope you're right, because the moment a girl is harmed in a space where she's supposed to feel safe because you refused to vote ethically or morally, you're going to take responsibility, because I'm going to give you affidavits, waivers that hold you accountable for the decisions you make on this board. I assume you believe no harm would come to these poor girls since you voted this way. But since we all know that harm will come, and you've stood proudly by your beliefs, you'll have no problem signing this waiver. And here's how it's going to go. I, Bill Sorensen, Melissa Ewing, and David Sandoval, having voted publicly and on record to allow males into females' restrooms and refusing to protect girls, agree to accept full responsibility for the girls' well-being in all Peoria schools. In all circumstances in which a female is raped, assaulted, molested, harassed, chastised, violated, tormented, touched, fondled, bullied, overpowered, or inappropriately addressed in a female facility by a biological male who identifies, I agree to the following. I will pay reparations to the girl for all the mental health related expenses due to her trauma. I will pay all medical and health bills related to the incident. I will step down from this board immediately, recuse myself as a board member since my vote endangered the students I was sworn to protect, and clearly incompetent of upholding my oath. I will issue a public apology to the girl who was harmed in a restroom she should have been safe in, the parents of my victims for not protecting their daughter, Heather Rooks and Rebecca Hill for refusing to support their vote to protect girls, the entire community for violating my oath and bringing harm to their children. I will issue a public statement admitting that it is unsafe for boys to use girls' restrooms, admitting that the feelings and inclusivity of one or two boys over the safety, security, and protection of thousands of girls should never have been a priority or even a discussion. I issue this statement and agree to these terms due to my public and official opinion that girls' restrooms are no longer a protected space in the schools, and I take full responsibility and accountability for the repercussions of my vote. Again, you voted so proudly that this was safe and inclusive, you don't even recognize that this brave girl is braver than you, and this is who you're willing to sacrifice for boys.
Thank you, Ms. Graham. Appreciate your time. Next public comment comes from Miss Christina Rogers. Yep, thank you. Bill, is that Bill? Is that correct?
Philip Sanders.
Philip Sanders. Let me just make sure you have a slip filled out here, sir. Yes, sir. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me the time to speak.
Of course.
I want to refer to a case in Virginia that you're probably aware of where a 15-year-old boy did sexually assault a young lady in a bathroom because of a policy like this. Why it's being said that that has never happened is beyond me, but it has. Also recently in Wisconsin, we had an 18-year-old expose himself to 14-year-old girls in the school bathroom. With that said, I'm personally am a homeschool father for this reason. And I still wanted to come and speak a message to the parents here because like somebody else said, we have the unique privilege in Arizona of being able to fight with our tax dollars through the ESA program. I say take your kids out of here. If they don't care about y'all and protecting your daughters, why are we continuing to give them our money? ESA is the one thing these teachers unions fought against for a reason because they don't want you to have the power to do that. Get your kids out these schools. Because at the end of the day, as a father, if I was in the predicament that y'all are putting these fathers in, there's no lengths I wouldn't go for my children. I don't care about the law, because if we were gonna follow the law and protect policies that are unrighteous because of the law, myself and my children would still be shackled and chained into slavery today.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. We have time for a couple more public comments. This next one comes from Ms. Jenna Rain.
Hi. So initially, I did not have any intentions of speaking tonight, but I just do think it's fair for everybody to give their thoughts on the situation. I've spoken multiple times before. I'm a former PUSD student, attended the PUSD system for 7 years. My brother is still a PUSD student. And I struggle to see how you can look a young lady, such as this young lady right here, and I'm guessing your sister, and see so many other kids. I've talked to so many other kids in the PUSD system who are concerned about this policy and not, at the very least, try to find a middle ground solution to this issue. Because like I mentioned at the last meeting, which I spoke at after the vote was made, if a definitive policy or lack thereof is not made on this issue, then every single school board meeting going forward from this one for several months to come will only be about this issue. And then we can't be surprised that it's only about this issue because we've refused to properly address it. We have to address the elephants in the room. We have to find a solution, even if that means just building extra restrooms, individual person restrooms that are exclusive to either sex, even if that works, so that transgender individuals do go into a restroom that they do feel safe in. Because I understand, as a teenager, you can't, it's such an evolving stage in your life. I understand wanting to have a restroom where you genuinely feel comfortable. I get that, and I think that's what this issue is about, no matter what side you're on, being in a restroom that you're comfortable in. So at least consider allowing students to, transgender students to use the nurse's restroom or building an individual restroom for them. We should not allow them to use the restroom of their opposite biological sex at the expense of the safety or comfortability of young women like this. That's simply not okay. And I know I'm kind of talking to a wall right now because this decision has already been made. I understand that. But like I said, you can't be surprised when every meeting from this point forward is only about this issue because we just refuse to address it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. All right, this final public comment comes from Ms. Jasmine Sanders.
I just want to say something real quick. I apologize. My daughters are not a public pawn here.
Thank you. Ms. Sanders, welcome.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm a housewife and a fed-up mother of 8 beautiful children. I homeschooled them all, and because
I homeschooled them all because I refuse to subject them to the insanity that is going on in our schools today. As a parent, as adults, as teachers, as civil servants in charge of the education of our children, which is our future, it is your job first and foremost to protect children. By affirming and allowing children who are confused about their gender identity to access restrooms of their choosing, it's not only harmful for them, it is harmful for the majority who do not feel comfortable sharing a bathroom with a biological male. You are changing the rules that have been here for ages in order to protect women and children, so you can accommodate a very small percentage of people. It is our job as adults to guide children to what is right and what is true. As the school board officials, it is your job to represent the community and advocate for all students, not just a few who need real help. By you all playing into this gender dysphoria, you are furthering their pain. You're putting a Band-Aid over a bullet wound. There's clearly a deeper issue and trauma that you are all neglecting by affirming and not addressing the root problem here. You're covering up what is really going on. And as for those of you who know this is wrong, but you don't speak up out of fear of being canceled or losing a paycheck, you're just as guilty as the person who abused or neglected these children, which led them here to this confusion in the first place. The blood is on your hands as well. I pray a holy conviction comes upon you all to do what is right for the safety and protection of our children. And I appreciate the board officials who are standing on the side of righteousness. Thank you, and God bless you for your boldness.
Thank you. Once again, thank you, everybody, for your time. All right, we had no items removed from consent. We will now move down to action items 10.1. Consideration of revision number 3 to the maintenance and operations district additional assistance and classroom site fund budgets for fiscal year 2022-2023. Ms. Myers, welcome.
Good evening again, President Sandoval, members of the governing board, Dr. Reynolds. I do not have any additional information to add to the presentation that I gave during the public hearing regarding this agenda item. Thank you.
Okay. Board members, any questions or comments that might have arose between Ms. Myers speaking earlier and now, Ms. Hill?
I'm just going to reiterate that I am not in, I don't feel that it's appropriate to give monies into a school that is not going to support every single student. And so from this point forward, pretty much until we start supporting 100% of our population of students at PUSD, which obviously includes the girls, I'm voting no on a lot of stuff, a lot of stuff. I don't see the point in putting any money, a dime, into such a broken, evil system. So this is a hard no for me until the board rethinks their decision on protecting the girls of PUSD.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Dr. Sorensen?
No, sir.
Mrs. Rooks?
I just would like to, I guess, comment on, I see here number 3, the classroom site fund. I am very adamant and strong on not allowing, I think it's wrong that we're not giving the classroom site funds to the teachers, that we're also giving it to the social workers on top of the grant. So that's my only comment this evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Ricks. Mrs. Ewing.
I don't have any comments. Thank you.
Ms. Myers, I don't have any comments either. So that said, I do need a motion to approve the revision to the fiscal year 2022-2023 expenditure budget, including the maintenance and operations, district additional assistance, and classroom site fund budgets as presented.
I will motion for the 10.1 consideration of revision number 3 to the maintenance and operations district additional assistance and classroom site fund budgets for fiscal year 2022 and 2023.
I'll second that. Ms. Contra, we have a motion made by Mrs. Ewing and a second made by myself. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes with 3 yeas and 2 nays. Thank you, board members. All right, moving on to 10.2, Citizens Advisory Committee update and recommendations. Ms. Myers,
Yes,
welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening again, President Sandoval, members of the governing board, Dr. Reynolds, colleagues, and community. Thank you for the opportunity to present an overview of the Citizens Advisory Committee's work over the last several months and associated recommendations to the governing board. Tonight, I will review the committee's purpose, membership, and information that was shared at committee meetings. I will also review the considerations that were evaluated related to a bond election, as well as the committee's final recommendations. At the end of the presentation, administration will ask for direction from the governing board on next steps. The governing board reconvened the Citizens Advisory Committee on November 10th, 2022. The purpose was to make a recommendation to the governing board regarding calling for a bond election Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. If the recommendation of the committee is that the Peoria Unified School District should go out for a bond, the committee will also recommend dollar amounts to correspond with the recommendation. At the November 10th meeting, the governing board also approved the 11-member Citizens Advisory Committee with returning members from prior committees, as well as new members to replace those who could not return and were not available to participate in the process this year. I don't see that we do have any of our committee members with us this evening, but I would like to publicly thank those members for the time that they spent at the meetings over the last several months and for their input and discussion. And we certainly appreciate all of their effort as part of this process. The committee began meeting in January, with the last meeting being held on April 25th. All 6 meetings were held here at the district office and were open to the public, as well as subject to open meeting law. Meeting agendas, materials, and minutes were posted in board docs for our community to review and reference. A number of considerations served as a framework for the committee's evaluation. This included reviewing priority and essential elementary and high school projects, security, technology, transportation, and related needs, and understanding the funding that is available to the district for these types of projects and purchases. In addition, the district's tax rate, assessed valuations, property taxes, and bonding capacity were also reviewed. Another consideration was the district's demographics and future enrollment projections. Information was also shared with the committee regarding Arizona law that allows public school districts to ask voters in their community to approve bond authorizations through local property taxes. Bond sale proceeds pay for construction projects, facility renovations, and other eligible capital expenditures that cannot normally be supported through annual capital funding from the state of Arizona. It was shared that the district's most recent bond authorization that was approved in 2012, a $180 million bond authorization, has been fully sold and the program is complete at this time. On the next 3 slides, there's a summary of agenda items that were covered over the last 6 Citizens Advisory Committee meetings. This included information on the process that the committee would follow, as well as presentations on school finance, the School Facilities Oversight Board and bonds, and property taxes. The committee also received information regarding the district's outstanding bonds, district assessed valuation, and tax rates. Demographic and enrollment projections were also provided by Applied Economics, which showed that the district's enrollment projections have flattened, and enrollment growth will be slower over the next 10 years than originally expected. Critical and essential projects from the 2020 facility assessment study that the district commissioned, district facility master planning projects, and future transportation and technology needs were also reviewed with the committee. There was also an update on school repurposing, as well as work that was done in that area, including availability of land that may be suitable for a future high school. And through this process, we did share that the parcel of land that the district had been tracking for a number of years that would be suitable for a high school is no longer available for the district to purchase at this time. At the second to the last meeting, information from the public opinion survey that was taken earlier in the spring was also shared, as well as high school field improvements that may save water. There was also discussion on facility rentals, as well as discussion regarding the 3 donated school land parcels that the district has for future elementary school construction, as well as any reversion language that may have been included in those donation agreements. This summarized information has also been previously provided to the governing board in the form of a Friday report after each Citizens Advisory Committee meeting, including a copy of the meeting's minutes. At the April 25th meeting, the Citizens Advisory Committee also revisited their purpose to consider a recommendation to the governing board regarding calling for a bond election on November 7th, 2023. And if a recommendation was made to call for an election, the committee would also recommend the total bond authorization amount and associated categories within that bond authorization and category totals. At this time, I would like to ask Mr. Kevin Molino, Chief Technology and Operations Officer, to join me to review the bond-eligible district needs and projects that were reviewed in detail with the Citizens Advisory Committee. Mr. Molino, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. President Sandoval, members of the governing board, Dr. Reynolds, cabinet, and guests. The information I will be sharing with you tonight was presented during the March 30th, 2023 governing board study session, except for one project category, and I'll make sure I highlight that slide when I get to it. This almost sounds like a broken record because I think I've said this line probably 20 or 30 times to you in the last year, but during the 2019-2020 fiscal year, the district contracted the ADM group to perform a facility assessment of all our facility district sites. The project prioritization was broken up into different categories such as critical, essential, necessary, and desirable. In 2020, the cost of all these categories totaled over $300 million. We presented to the committee the projects that are only in the critical and essential categories, and these would be items such as roofing, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, fire life safety, flooring, foundations, wall system, and site improvements, just to name a few. The dollar amount at the time of the assessment in 2020 was $120 million. We have completed $35 million worth of projects, of repairs and replacement since then, and with inflation, we are left with approximately $93 million worth of critical and essential needs projects. Our bus fleet consists of 165 regular and special education buses. During the life of a new bond, we would need to replace 72 out of the 165, so roughly 44% of our fleet. We would also purchase one additional white activity bus for each high school because of their high usage and needs. For technology, we have consolidated all the projects into 4 main categories. The 2 categories on the right side of the slide, data center and network, are not major concerns for me because they are so critical that every year we prioritize these on a yearly basis and leverage other possible funding sources, such as E-rate, which is a federal grant program, and our own capital. The one that does concern me in regards to the next 8 years is the $15 million worth of student laptops. And those come up for replacement in the next 3 to 5 years. Those laptops were pretty much all funded through the federal ECF program, which is the Emergency Connectivity Fund, and that was about 2 years ago. The following are a mix of different project categories that involve facility upgrades and repairs. The first one is restrooms in regards to repairs and upgrades. This would be addressing approximately 261 out of the district 1,133 restrooms district-wide. These 261 facilities are over 40 years old. For school safety and projects such as digital cameras and vape sensors, front office remodels, fencing, door access control, and door hardware, along with digital signage and emergency notification. These projects are all aligned with our crime prevention through environmental design methodology. For high school auditoriums and elementary stages, and then both high school and elementary visual arts, theater, dance-related facility repairs and upgrades. And then new construction options for new elementary school and a new high school. The cost of land, as Ms. Myers has said, the parcel of land that we had been monitoring is no longer available. So if we were to try to build another high school, we would have to purchase that land. And the cost of land has increased in that area for the district, which is north of the 303. It has more than doubled in the last year. This is the one slide that the board did not get information on during the study session. Field renovations is the one project category. This was presented to the committee in April after several conversations with both the city and the Arizona Department of Water Resources in regards to water conservation. The cost of water is going up. There's a shortage of it, and we're going to be we have to submit a water plan to the state, and they're going to allocate how much water we should be using based off how much turf and desert landscaping we have. And then they will monitor whether we're going over or under that. This would be renovating our athletic fields by removing turf and replacing it with synthetic. The cost varies from $11 to $15 million depending on the add-ons that we go with. We've spoken about Liberty High School before, and we have covered this item several times, and it's adding a new building to Liberty High School in lieu of building a new building at Liberty in lieu of building a new high school, especially to buy us time. You can see that adding all the categories together is well over $400 million. At this time, I will hand it back to Ms. Myers, and she will continue to walk us through the process the committee went through and the financial aspects of bonding capacity and tax rates.
Thank you, Mr. Molino.
Thank you, Mr. Molino. There are several district funding sources for facility projects and capital purchases that were reviewed with the committee and are listed on this slide. It's also important to note that public school districts have historically relied on bond authorizations for comprehensive projects, district-wide renovations, the construction of new schools, as an example, in many instances, as well as bus purchases, technology acquisitions. And Peoria Unified, we do track opportunities through the School Facilities Oversight Board where appropriate, and we have received funding in recent years for projects, as well as we prioritize our district additional assistance, also referred to as capital funding, and we do track where there are eligible grants, and those funding mechanisms are monitored, and so those options were shared with the committee. The committee also considered the district's bonding capacity and property tax rate as they reviewed factors that led to their ultimate recommendation. Secondary property taxes on residential and commercial property within the Peoria Unified School District support the district's 13% M&O override, as well as not only our 2012 bond authorization, but past bond authorization related bond sales. In fiscal year 2023, the bond secondary tax rate was 0.8758 per $100 of limited assessed valuation, and the combined secondary tax rate this fiscal year is $2.23 rounded per $100 of limited assessed valuation. The graph on the slide does show that over the last 7 years, the district's secondary tax rate has been decreasing. And that's in part due to the payment of outstanding bond sales, the amortization of that debt, coupled with increases in the assessed valuation of property within the district. Information was also provided to the committee by Mr. Brian Lundberg, Managing Director with Stiefel, regarding the district's current outstanding bond sales, assessed valuation of taxable property, bonding capacity, credit rating, and related information. And you can see that's detailed on this slide. Effective July of 2023, after our next principal payment, the district will have $153 million of outstanding bond principal. Our most recent bond credit rating from Standard & Poor is AA negative, which is a very good rating for a public school district. For illustrative purposes, 8 example scenarios were shared with the committee, detailing associated tax rate timeframes and dollar amounts that would be available. Information for a possible November 2023 bond program, including sale phasing and amortization timelines, is detailed briefly on this slide, and then we'll look at the scenarios on the next slide. And you can see they ranged anywhere from $150 million in excess of $300 million. And what each scenario would look like from a tax rate perspective, amortization timeline, and also what dollar amount might be available for furniture, technology, and equipment purchases that technically require a shorter amortization or payback period due to the useful life of those assets. It was also noted that bond authorizations ranging from $150 million to $250 million could be managed without a tax rate increase. This is demonstrated in this chart. The slide here is an example of a $250 million authorization, and it shows the existing bond sale tax rate bars in blue, as well as a new bond authorization with the associated tax rate in gray bars, and you can see where those blue bars start to drop off. The gray bars fill in, and it's flat, no tax rate increase. And that would be based on a November 2023 bond election with a first bond sale occurring in early 2024. The district's assessed valuation data for the last 10 years was also shared with the committee, as this has an impact on tax rate estimates. Based on the information presented at the 6 committee meetings, the committee is recommending to the Peoria Unified School District Governing Board that the district should call for a bond election on November 7th, 2023. The recommendation was made at the April 25th Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. 10 of the 11 members were present, and the vote was 10 yea, 0 nay. The Citizens Advisory Committee provided input on at the April 25th meeting regarding the compilation of a $250 million bond authorization. And on this slide is the result of the committee's input and what was compiled at the meeting that was based primarily on the $200 million of facility maintenance project technology, safety, transportation, and related needs that Mr. Molino reviewed and highlighted in the summary slide, as well as new elementary school construction at the Meadows and another northern elementary parcel in the district, as well as a new academic building at Liberty High School. The amount also includes funding to purchase land for a future high school when that land becomes available, either from a developer or through a state land auction. The district would reduce the total cost of the identified projects with annual capital funding allocations, as well as projected school facilities oversight renewal grants totaling $38.6 million and $8 million respectively. So you see those dollar amounts detailed on this table, reducing the original amount to $250 million. It brings it down from the 296.6 to 250 million. This amount, again, was a threshold for the committee because they did not want to exceed an amount that would not result in the tax rate remaining stable. That would result in not having a tax rate increase for the community. At the April 25th, 2023 meeting, the committee voted 10-0 to approve the $250 million bond authorization. At the same meeting, the committee approved total amounts for elementary projects, high school projects, including safety, new construction, and a future land purchase for a new high school, as well as technology and pupil transportation vehicles, purchases all within a $250 million authorization. Per policy BDF, recommendations of the board committees cannot be binding on the board. It's simply a recommendation, and they serve as an advisory arm for the governing board. These committees will make recommendations for action based on research and facts. Any such committee shall automatically be dissolved upon completion of its assignment. This is the case for the current Citizens Advisory Committee. They have completed their work, and at this point, there are no future committee meetings planned. The next step is to request a motion from the governing board to direct administration to work with legal counsel and our professional advisors to formally bring forward the Citizens Advisory Committee recommendation in the form of a $250 million bond authorization for approval at the May 22nd governing board meeting. This concludes the presentation. Mr. Molino and I are both available to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. We do have a few public comments tied to this line item. So we will listen to public comment, and then we'll get into board member questions and comments. All right, same rules apply in this public comment, 3 minutes per speaker. First public comment comes from Jennifer C.
President Sandoval, Superintendent Reynolds, members of the board, I just want to speak in favor of this upcoming bond. I know some have said that they are not going to spend a penny on this district because they feel that the rights of some have been violated, but in doing so, they'll be violating the rights of every student in Peoria to education, to have equal opportunity to be educated. And our district is already busting at the seams. I know because of the ESSR grants expiring, our reading specialists were now moved to 2 campuses per day. So they're serving one campus half the day and one campus on the other half the day, which means our K-4 students are not getting the intervention that they should have a right to because there's no funding for it. And I know that is not going to be covered in this bond, but we need to put the funds in place to make space for the students, to hire the teachers, to fund this district so that it can run properly and serve every student every day prepared to shape tomorrow. And so I ask for you to vote on the 22nd in favor of passing this bond. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Next public comment comes from Marcy Robb.
Our volleyball game. We lost her. No, I'm here. Oh, she's here. Good evening. I'm not even sure what we're doing anymore in this district. It's so sad to me that we are arguing about things that people aren't even willing to sit down and talk about. When I look at what people are saying and how they care about kids and how it's every student every day, but only if you agree with what I say. That's the only time we do every student every day. Because if I don't agree, then I'm going to disagree with everything, even if it's best for every kid every day. So I'm not sure what's going on anymore. The things that are being put out on social media about the bond.
Just real quick, I apologize for interrupting. I just want to reiterate that this line item is tied to the bond. So,
Right.
I mean, if you can wrap your comments around that, that would be awesome.
Okay. So, as I was saying, when people say things on social media that are not true, when they make things seem different than they really are, people believe that, and they go out and they decide that we're not a good district and we don't want to vote for bonds and overrides. And I have discussions with people out in the halls. I talk to parents. I talk to board members who will talk to me. I've asked Ms. Hill to meet with me about these very things, and not willing to talk because we don't agree, which I don't understand that. We're all here for kids. I've spent 33 years in this district because I love it, and I love our kids. Disagreement is the way we make change. That is the only way you have change. If everybody agreed every day about everything, nothing would change or happen or get better. And we just need to come to the table and stop with the nonsense on all of these things. I saw something that was just, it breaks my heart because these little girls believe that we think boys should go into bathrooms. That's not happening what I see. If it's happening on a campus, then we need to deal with it, and we need to get on that. But we need to stop all the rhetoric out there that's hurting the kids, because the adults are the ones that are not able to handle this. The kids just come to school. They just want to learn. They just want to do what they're supposed to do, play sports. And we got them in board meetings crying because they're afraid. I don't know why they would be afraid at my school. I am in those bathrooms every day. I watch what goes on we have security guards there. It's not happening that I see, so I can't speak to it. Find out where this is happening and let's take care of it so we can move on and make decisions that are good. Let's pass these bonds. Let's get this stuff for all of
Thank
our
you, Ms.
kids.
Robb. I appreciate your time. Next public comment tied to this line item is coming from Mr. Josh Gray. I just want to send out another reminder that this is on the Citizens Advisory Committee update and recommendations. Welcome, sir.
I got you. Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak today, President Sandoval, Dr. Reynolds, members of the board, cabinet, and remaining guests. I've been to quite a few of these board meetings now, and I like to hang out to the end because that's when you find out like the boring details of the district, like the financial reports and stuff like that. And in doing so, I've learned about how overcrowded some of the schools in the northern part of the district are, and there's really only one solution to fix overcrowding in schools: build more schools, right? You can change the boundaries to try and even the attendance of different schools in the district, but well, that's not really feasible, and no one wants to go through the exercise of redrawing district lines. And you can always bus kids from the north side of the district to the south, but again, that's not really feasible either. I know recently some politicians said that they could build a school district in Peoria without having to pass a bond. That's just simply not true. The only way that you're going to be able to meet the demands of the population of this district is by adding another facility. We're already talking about giving up library space so the kids have classroom space, and you shouldn't have to make that choice. So this is a pretty easy decision that the board should be able to make, and it should be united in this decision so that every student has the opportunity to learn in this district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. All right, our final public comment tied to this line item is coming from Ms. Trina Berg.
Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds, cabinet. My name is Trina Berg. I've been a teacher and a parent in this district for a long time. This should be a 5-0 decision. We know that we have critical needs. This is not the first time you've heard this. And if you really truly feel that you can't support the district, then abstain. Don't vote against this. We know we need this. This is the bare minimum, and we're literally going to you with the bare minimum of what we really need. As we said, we have facilities that are 40 years old. We need to fix them. That's my campus. We need to fix them. We have a water situation. Turf would fix it. It's a huge investment up front and a very long-term savings. You have talked about safety, and this bond literally talks about safety issues. So talking that we need safety and then turning around and voting no on a bond that would help us get that is completely just hypocritical. If you say we need this, we need this. A committee has said we need this stuff. We know we need this stuff. You know, everyone knows we need these things. This should be a 5-0 decision. I ask that you support this. We go forward to the go forward to the voters, and I ask that not only do you support this here and vote for it, but then you go out to the community and you actively say that we need this, and do not campaign against this bond. You know as well as we do that we need this bond. We've needed one for a long time, and we're at critical point where if we don't start pulling back in bond money, we're going to have to pull M&O, and that's people. So now we're going to lose even more resources. We're going to lose the other things that our students need because we're going to have to pay for capital. We're going to have to pay for bond items. You know that we have computers. We all got our computers at the same time, which means they're all going to die at the same time. They're already a few years old, and we're starting to see them get a little bit slower. They're starting to get damaged. Kids are rough on the computers. We all know this. We have to replace them. This is a critical needs bond. We are not asking for the world. We're not even asking for as much as we need. So again, I ask that you support it and then campaign for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berg. All right. Myers, Mr. Molino. Welcome back.
Thank you, and I'll ask for the presentation to be brought back up, please.
All right, board members, questions, comments? Ms. Hill?
I actually do understand how desperately we need this bond. I know that it has not passed the last few times it has come up. The voters didn't want it. The board kind of shot itself in the foot when they voted not for all the students at the last meeting. I personally believe that this bond is going to fail because there's no way that the vast majority are going to vote for a bond to put money into a school district that doesn't support every single kid. You're also asking for the vast majority of the community to vote for a bond under this horrible recession that we're in. We've got $5 gas. People are having issues paying for groceries, but we're supposed to cough up $250 million. I appreciate all the time and effort that the committee put together on this project, and it was a lot of work, and I realize that. And like I said, I could maybe support this bond had the decision been different at the board at the last meeting, but I think it's absolutely ridiculous, again, to put a penny into the school district that doesn't deserve it.
Ms. Hill, I apologize. Ladies and gentlemen, I know I say this often during our board meetings, but please refrain from any commentary while an individual is speaking. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I would recommend, you're right, the school's falling apart and they need help and they need money, but this is not the time to ask for it. I just don't think it's the right time. People have vouchers. I would suggest using them.
Hey, Ms. Hill. Dr. Sorensen.
Yeah, when I look at the committee 10-0, they say we should go out for it. I was the only member to vote to go out for it last time. I have worked in our schools and I know that they are falling apart. I think Mr. Molino presented to us that we're working on functionality from like the 1990s in some places. So it's gotten more expensive now than the last time. I thought we should have gone out for it. We are the only district that you can see that has high schools that are still playing on grass, because every other district knows it's a financial saving and it's better. It requires less maintenance, less water to move that way. Our growth is in the Northwest, and I don't know what we're going to do for transportation. You know, our bus yard is on Thunderbird and the 101, and all of the expansion is up there. I mean, just some basic functionality things that our kids need. And I know our auditoriums are being held by thread and duct tape, and our kids deserve better. Our kids deserve the best. And if anyone has a solution to restrooms that is including restrooms, you have to be in support of this, because that is a major financial burden. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. Mrs. Rooks.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I did have just a couple of questions. I know for the land for Meadows, I actually drove through that community, and I saw that, Liberty High School, the parking situation, kids parking on the side of the road, kind of near that land piece. And it was kind of brought to my attention from community members in that community of, what it would look like having an elementary school there when you already have a lot of traffic flow and parking from students, and putting another elementary school there, more traffic. So I would like to see it was brought to my attention of a parking lot there instead of a school. I mean, because we're worried about the parking issues surrounding Liberty. So I wanted to kind of make that note. And then on the safety section, I know I've talked to you, Mr. Molino, about a couple of things on there, and I appreciate that. But with the safety and security, yes, I've advocated for it. But what I've also done is done my research. And I have looked and talked to Dysart Unified and trying to figure out, what did they do? What safety features do they have? How did they afford it? And I was told that they applied for grants, they worked it through their budget, and they were able to put in security cameras, the fencing, locked front office doors at all of their schools. So for me, if we're talking about we need to be fiscally responsible and looking and seeing all those different grants out there, I know there is Title 4A. I have looked into that and I have brought that forward. And I guess you have to take into a factor as well that the past couple of years, the bond has not passed. The voters don't want it. Inflation is high right now. I have to agree, paying $5 a gallon for my van, it's expensive. So that's going for everybody. And you have to think about, again, how much the bond will cost. Ms. Myers, if you can reiterate on that, to put it on the ballot, that I think needs to be taken into consideration. Because if it fails again, which it's been failing, I just want to make sure that we're being very fiscally responsible. And again, I do think that with the previous vote on the bathroom situation, that is going to turn off a lot of parents and community members to want, when you're asking them to support the district and support these needs, but you're not listening to their voices and their concerns. I can't support that. I know that there's issues, I get it, but I think we need to start thinking outside of the box. The school facilities board, yes, we have more growth in the north, but maybe we need to look at the south too. So that's just, I know I asked a lot of questions and then comments, sorry.
Thank you. President Sandoval, Mrs. Ricks, members of the board, thank you for your questions to address the Meadows and that 13-acre parcel that's currently fenced in that community. It is deed restricted for an elementary school, and the donation agreement from the developer has a restriction for an elementary school, and it also has a reversion clause that if an elementary school is not constructed, if material construction is not started within a 10-year time frame from the donation date, which was early spring of 2019, that the developer has the option to take the donation back. Now, of course, with the design of an elementary school, options related to how large the parking lot is, or how that facility is used, that can be part of the architectural design. But we do not have the option with that donated parcel to use it for any other intended purpose other than an elementary school. Secondly, in regard to grants and opportunities that districts explore, we too look at grant opportunities. We've been aggressively monitoring the School Facilities Oversight Board and renewal grants that are available, and we've received a number of those grants, $15+ million in just the last couple of years. We have $8 million we're targeting, you'll see on this slide. Also, the restoration of district additional assistance capital funding has allowed all districts to use those state dollars for more capital purposes, including security, and you'll see with our proposed budget for next year where we have capital dollars allocated for cameras, vape sensors, elementary school front office renovations, we are bringing to the table $36 to $38 million, actually it's $38.6 million of capital funding to help offset some of these costs. So similar to Dysart and other districts, we are pursuing those same avenues. And yes, you are correct when it comes to election costs. It can vary year over year. If it's not a general election, the cost can be anywhere from $325,000 to $340,000. During a general election or presidential election, that cost does go down. It's closer to $120,000 to $130,000 as an example. So there is that consideration, and you are correct. It is something that the district does incur. But I just wanted to provide a response. I thought your questions were very good. Thank you.
Sorry, can I ask one more? Okay. The very beginning with the contract, I know, Dr. Reynolds, you brought that up with the contract for the Meadows. Yeah, that it has to be an elementary school. Is that something that we could bring back with that developer to run the idea of a parking lot versus an elementary school? Because I know you said looking at architecture, making it a bigger parking lot, but I think what I'm also concerned with is you will have parents picking up their kids, the traffic flow in and out of that neighborhood just because of Liberty High School's all the cars and the kids picking them up and the buses. That's where my concerns are. And then maybe asking that community, do they want an elementary school right there when we already have a lot of traffic flow in that area?
That parcel is restricted for an elementary school from a zoning perspective. Of course, there's always an option to ask for an amendment to a donation agreement. However, this donation agreement goes back many years and was amended most recently in 2019. That developer does reserve the right to take the parcel back as well if we don't build. And it very well may be that as homes were being sold in that community members thought an elementary school was going to be built there. Oftentimes, developers highlight future home of an elementary school with the parcel. But at this point, with the current structure of the donation agreement, we could not simply create a large parking lot. We would have to look at other options.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. Mrs. Ewing.
Yes, I have a couple questions. Well, I have lots of questions, but if you can go back to the Liberty slide really quick, I think it's 18. I just wanted clarification on it. And when I went out to the site, well, I've been out there several times, but when I went out to the site of Liberty, it showed me the spot where the additional building will be built, right? That's what the plan is, and how the footprint of the school, as Mr. Duguid said, it almost looks like it's missing a building, so we do have a perfect location for that. But I just wanted to make sure that, I thought you said it didn't include it, but it does include it with the building?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It is detailed here on this slide.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and then, okay, so definitely on Liberty High School, the building, and I know that I've been up to Lake Pleasant as well to see where they're talking, the committee has come forward with building another building out at Lake Pleasant to help with the overflow of all of the different classes and so forth. So I don't really have a question with that. I'm just saying that I have seen that.
Thank you. And President Sandoval, Mrs. Ewing, members of the board, if I may clarify, the Citizens Advisory Committee did not provide input or direction on a building at Lake Pleasant Elementary. Administration did share that as part of the growth in the northern part of the district that is being considered. I know Mr. Molino provided an update in a recent Friday report. The district would be funding that building from our own capital dollars. That's not included in this bond authorization.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. And then on the fields, you said that we're changing out some of the fields from the turf to the synthetic, so it's a different to help with the water conservation, is that correct?
President Sandoval, Mrs. Ewing, that's correct. It would be removing the grass turf and replacing it with synthetic turf.
Okay, because I know that something to also just consider going forward is that I know Liberty High School especially, there are a lot of community uses that organizations would like to use that field for, and they can't because they need to have an off-season where the grass can't actually grow. By the time they get to soccer, there's no grass. But they have said that if we went to turf, that we do have the possibility of gaining some actual revenue on that because it can be used more often for whether it's schools or community groups coming in and being able to. So there is an opportunity for some revenue there.
President Sandoval, Mrs. Ewing, that is correct. With synthetic turf, there is no limit on how much use you can use it throughout the year. It has a useful lifespan of roughly a decade, 10 years. You do get added functionality and use from it, and depending on the add-ons, not all synthetic turf will save you 100% of the water, especially in the months of August. You would have to cool it down to then do the practice unless you have a practice field or for the games where the band is going to use it. So it will save you in water. It won't save 100% of the water, but it will also save in staff time in striping it, fertilizer, pesticides, all those kind of things that go into the maintenance. But the biggest thing is you will get more use out of the field in those 10 years.
And then I know you and I talked about this, but I just wanted to clarify. So with all of the items underneath the safety portion of on the Citizens Advisory, with what's come up with the proposal, I know that as I've been out to all of our schools now, is that they're trying to it's not really retrofitting, but outfitting all of the front offices to be that first line of, I guess, defense, the buildings, to make sure that they're safe. And then I know adding the gates, a lot of our schools are in need of those gates. But I just wanted to, I know we talked about priority, and so I just would like to have a little bit more detail on the safety, all the aspects of underneath safety for this.
President Sandoval, Mrs. Ewing, this year in regards to, let me go back to the presentation given to the Citizens Advisory. We did adjust throughout the year as Mr. Reese, our new safety and security coordinator, started the SEPTED assessments, and we started prioritizing and seeing where weaknesses were. And in regards to front office vestibule, having that locked experience, especially after 2 or 3 incidents where community members went all the way into the principal's office without being stopped. We started addressing the school front offices with operations capital budget from our yearly allocation. So we did prioritize in working with Ms. Myers and Cabinet. We did prioritize the operations budget to move more funds into safety from other areas. Those were roughly $388,000 out of this fiscal year for school front offices. We also reallocated roughly $210,000 for high school cameras with vape sensors. That order is in, and we are projecting those to be ready for August or September, depending on how fast the cabling contractors can perform the cabling portions. And we're also reprioritizing, knowing that we cannot wait, or we should not wait, for elementary school video surveillance and cameras, and then also for vape sensors in middle school restrooms. So we're working with Ms. Myers. We're reprioritizing that funding. We've been working for the last probably 3 or 4 months making the design of where the cameras would go for both internal and external coverages of elementary schools. The MT department just completed those about 2 weeks ago. And then we created a bill of materials in regards to the camera models. And then we've also done the redesign for high school camera, the field of view coverage, to include internal coverage inside the high schools, and then also change the location and augment the field of views for the external cameras. And then we're reprioritizing operations capital funding from this fiscal year mixed with new July 1 funding for operations so we can proceed with that entire purchase.
So it's my understanding that if this does not get passed, then all of those priorities we have set, it takes a longer period of time, which that increases the risk for our kids. If we can get the bond passed, then we can get all of those items covered much more quickly. Would you?
Yes?
Okay.
That is correct, Mrs. Ewing.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Yeah, for me, I mean, you know, we've needed a bond since I was first elected in 2016, and one of the things I said back then was, you know, the longer we wait to actually pass a bond, the more expensive it becomes, and here we are. It's more expensive to execute and fulfill on the needs. I do have a couple questions though around the committee, right? I know it's a 10-0 vote. It is a 10-0 vote really on defining the needs, right, of the district. I mean, so, and if that's not the case, can you speak a little bit about what other considerations that were in there, I guess, in the conversations to say, we need to go out for a bond this year? Can you speak to that at all?
Well, I can, and I'll refer the governing board to the slides that summarized the 6 meetings and the framework that was used by the committee to analyze needs, to evaluate information that was shared. But of course, there was foundational information from how schools are funded to information regarding funding options, SFB, funding, tax rates, existing bond sales, and future capacity. So there was that foundational start, and then several meetings of looking at actual identified future projects, open items from the facilities, assessment, technology, transportation. But there was also the opportunity for a public opinion survey. The committee did ask administration to move forward with that, and those results were presented in March. And some of the questions in that survey included asking the community, 400 likely voters, for priorities related to a bond. And safety was very high, as well as ensuring roofing and HVAC type projects were addressed. New construction was toward the bottom. And again, all of this information is part of the board docs, agendas, and minutes. So there was some input from the public opinion survey, but they really looked at data from our applied economics presentation, enrollment, as well as projected growth in the north portion. And I know Mr. Molino shared at study sessions how the district is growing in the north, but we have the aging out in the southern portion, as well as tax rate. Very important. You know, our assessed valuations growing, our outstanding bond sale amount is declining, hence that tax rate's declining. The committee felt that they should stay within a framework of no tax rate increase. So that was a guiding factor as well. But very thoughtful discussion among the committee members throughout the 6 meetings, and together the group as a committee actually compiled the final recommendation and voted 10-0. So they materially participated in the process.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And again, like I said earlier, I mean, we've needed a bond since, you know, 2016. And, you know, as our district continues to realize its growth and the community in the city of Peoria, you know, our classroom sizes absolutely are getting to a level where it becomes, I don't want to use the word problematic, but it becomes just difficult for our teachers, right, to kind of look beyond what's right in front of them so they can continue to meet our students where they're at and wrap around those services that they need to be successful throughout a district. Dr. Sorensen brought up earlier the restrooms and that line item. Can you talk a little bit about that? And so in our last meeting, you know, I did bring up a bond and restrooms and how we can use the bond dollars to adapt our sites to accommodate the shifting needs of our student population, right? In this case, single-use restrooms, et cetera. Is that thought included in this line item?
President Sandoval, I would say that we would take everything into consideration, especially in regards to feedback and direction from the board and the superintendent when we get to that point. The original intent for these bathrooms that are over 40 years old was to address their age, their welcoming and appearance, and they are already ADA compliant. We want to increase our ADA accessibility in them. And out of the last time, I believe it was in 2019, in the Citizens Advisory, restrooms were spoken in that 2018-2019 time period. It was pretty much just broken down at that point into two categories in regards to age. We broke it down into 3 or 4, knowing that because of the bond capacity and the tax rate, we had to come up with a smaller dollar amount. And that's how we ended up with 3 different phases, addressing restrooms that were over 40 years old, 25 to 39, and 10 to 24 years old. And if you think of a school like Sunset, by the time this bond is completed, those restrooms will be almost 20 years old at that time. So
Yeah.
we're just trying to think long-term.
Sure, yeah, no, without question, I think, you know, there's no doubt. I mean, you know, we've been a district, Miss Area, correct me if I'm wrong, what, almost 140 years? Is that right? So we do have some aging schools for sure that, you know, need to be lifted up as well, you know, across, you know, its entire footprint, right, to include restrooms. But I think, you know, as we've had discussions as recent, you know, with community members, students, et cetera, I know other districts, you know, are looking at ways to, again, you know, adapt their facilities to make sure that they're, again, adjusting to the needs and the shifting needs of our student population. What you said earlier, you'll follow the guidance of the board. What does that mean? I mean, we're voting today, right?
President Sandoval, what I meant was, if the board says go out for bond, the community approves the bond. And as we're then have a pool of money to use, and the category for restrooms was approximately 19 million, if I'm looking at Ms. Meyer's slide. 16.1 for elementary restrooms and 3.4 for high school restrooms. But then in that category in the bond pamphlet, it's broken down elementary. It's not in detail in elementary. It's elementary in general, high school in general. So then as the district reprioritizes our needs as we move forward, if taking a restroom that is, let's say, 280 square feet and segmenting it into individual use restroom or carving out one part of it into an individual use restroom, as long as we stay within the budget, we can address that.
Okay.
And if I may add to clarify Mr. Molino's comment, this detailed slide shows the granular categories and projects, but then you'll recall this next slide mirrors more of what a bond voter information pamphlet might look like. And of course, the final, if directed by the governing board, administration would bring back with our bond council the actual legal document, and you could see exactly what it looks like. But it's something similar to this where you have totals by category, and you'll note the descriptor that would include renovations and/or improvements to and for existing elementary schools, including safety, technology, furniture, equipment, and general facility and grounds improvement. I believe that's what Mr. Molino is speaking to. Our detailed tracker that we just looked at on the previous slide, there's a grand total that we're held to by elementary school and by category type, including transportation and technology.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, and I think for me, my overall point is this. I mean, there's no doubt that we have existing needs. We have aging needs. But in the same breath, you know, I want to make sure that as a district, I mean, we're, you know, an educational organization, and innovation and forward thinking, you know, is part of our, just part of the fabric of who we are, right? So even from a facilities perspective, yes, we need to care for those aging schools, make sure that they're safe, integrating, you know, other safety measures, but also thinking forward, again, how facilities, you know, maintain relevance, you know, again, to, again, those shifting needs, you know, of our student population. So that said, I mean, I've always been, we've needed this since I was first elected. For me, I mean, one of the best investments or returns on investment is investing in knowledge, and which means investing in our youth. This is important that one recommendation I would have is this, right? So it's been brought up a couple times. We've gone out for a bond. It hasn't passed. I would hope that, I mean, there's a lot of data and knowledge out there, right, from past bonds that whoever looks at it, can glean from it and build and, consumer voter profiles, if you will, to take a look at how we are communicating and connecting with our communities, right? Because they're very different. We have some homes that are grandparents taking care of their grandkids and some homes that don't have kids, and and we have our younger families. So it is important that, as we go out, that we're considering that and really taking advantage of the data that we already have to be successful moving forward. So this is something that absolutely needs to be successful. I think we're behind in being able to, accommodate a lot of the needs that we've needed for many years, and staying ahead of, what's anticipating what may be coming around the corner as well. So I know that's not a purview of you and team, but it just feels like just going out and understanding the need, that it just feels like that hasn't been compelling. So we need, in my mind, from a communications perspective, from a relationship perspective, I just think we need to be a little more compelling, a little more connected, and just really listening, to how individuals, engage with the district, because everybody engages a little bit differently. So all that said, thank you for all the details and the presentation. And this is definitely something that I'm in support of, but I do believe Ms. Rooks might have another comment. It felt like it anyway.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Thank you both, by the way.
President Sandoval, I just kind of wanted to go piggyback on what you were kind of walking through with the bathrooms. To me, the statement that you made sounded like, how are we going to, I didn't like the statement. It sounded like, let's put it out there in the community that, oh, parents, if you want a bathroom separated to protect your daughters, the only way to do it is through a bond. And that seems like that's a way to get the bond passed. And I think that that is the wrong message to send out there.
Yeah,
so
no, I appreciate you wanting to clarify that. That's not at all what I'm saying. What I am saying is that it should be a priority. If this is something that's passed, I want to make sure that it's included, right? Which you just stated it would be based on, if it passes, right, the bond, that dollar amount allows us to make decisions as a board to be able to, kind of shift, those needs from a bathroom perspective in this case, but not at all saying if a bond passes, and I'll also clarify that a little bit later, but I just wanted to make sure that it's top of mind. That's the consideration within that line item, not a reason why it should pass.
Okay.
I actually have a comment with regard to that as well. I mean, if you're going to make out separate restrooms, what about the locker rooms then? We still have the problems with the locker rooms, with boys exposing themselves in the locker room. So we still have that. And it would cost quite a bit more money to make individual stalls. I get it, but that's crazy money. It is. And I don't know why, again, we should have to accommodate for the few people, so with taxpayer dollars. So I think it's crazy.
All right. Ms. Ewan, looks like you have a question down there.
Maybe you can just give a quick summary. I remember, although he's not here, but Mr. Moss went through the survey results. I saw those on the notes. Can you, one of you, give a little bit of a summary of the survey that went out to the community just to gauge how they were feeling about voting and supporting this bond?
President Sandoval, members of the governing board, Mrs. Ewing, I think Mr. Moss may have been providing a survey, a district survey. We had as part of the applied economics, demographic, and a public opinion survey from High Ground.
Yes,
but
that's the one I was
those were
referring to.
different. Yes, thank you.
Let me clarify. So I know that he went out for a public opinion, but I also thought that there was something done where they made phone calls to folks. There was, and they had them in the different categories of what the voters were and how much they would support and if they felt safe. I thought that was part of the Citizens Advisory.
That was the public opinion survey that was conducted by High Ground. It was a telephone survey to 400 likely voters in the Peoria Unified School District. Some things that are notable with that survey, we do have a population of people who do not have students in the district, and so that's why those types of surveys are informative. Even outside of when there's been a Citizens Advisory Committee, we've used a public opinion survey in the past. And so, again, the board had access to those survey results, but they asked general questions on the direction of the district, as well as the community, education as a whole, and then priorities, if there were to be a bond, what would be a top priority versus not quite as important, and then reasonableness for a dollar amount. So the district in years past has had that type of a survey when we've had a Citizens Advisory Committee, but it was 400 likely voters.
I thought it showed that it was supportive in general of the bond, so thank you.
It did trend where there was support, that is correct.
Sorry if I can ask a question. With the survey, do you know when that survey was done, the time frame for the 400 calls?
It was in March.
It was in March? Okay, so
I believe it was March.
It was March, so
It was earlier in the spring.
Okay, all right, so it was after our last board meeting?
It was before.
Before, sorry, before the last board meeting is what I meant.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
All right. No further questions, comments. I do need a motion to approve the motion to direct administration to bring forward a resolution on May 22nd, 2023 for governing board approval to call for a bond election on November 7th, 2023, based on the Citizens Advisory Committee's recommendations. I'll move that we direct administration to bring forward a resolution on May 22nd for governing board approval to call for a bond election on November 7th, 2023, based on the Citizens Advisory Committee's recommendations.
I will second that.
Ms. Concho, we have a motion made by myself, a second by Mrs. Ewing. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes with 3 yeas, 2 nays. Thank you, board members. Ms. Myers, Mr. Merlino, thank you both very much. All right, moving on to 10.3, fiscal year 2024 budget development and compensation recommendations. Ms. Myers, it is your evening.
Thank you, President Sandoval, members of the governing board, Dr. Reynolds, community, and colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity to bring back a second time information related to the fiscal year 2024 expenditure budget and staff compensation. And tonight's presentation is a follow-up to April 27th regarding the district's process for our budget development considerations and priorities for compensation recommendations for next year. Again, this is the second meeting of 2, and so tonight we will be asking the governing board to formally approve the recommendations from the budget team and administration. On April 27th, I highlighted budget priorities and progress to date and the process the district has used regarding budget development and compensation recommendations. And I won't go into detail, but you've seen the slide before. This included the governing board's goal regarding budget and targeted budget priorities, including employee compensation, instructional resources, and facility utilization. The budget and compensation work the district has completed in recent years is a phased approach. It's a multi-year compensation framework for priorities, including beginning teacher salaries, classified employee compensation, and of course, compression. And so with that, on April 27th, I shared we started our work early as far as our initial budget development in October with requests coming from our departments and schools. And then, of course, the budget team became part of that process as they do every year. Employee stakeholders provide input into our budget and compensation process through a work group. We call it the budget team. It's over 30 district-wide employees from our certified, classified, and administrative employee groups to provide input on compensation increases, recommendations, stipends, positions, reclassifications, staffing modification, or model modifications, as well as benefit renewals each year. The budget team to date has met 9 times, and we have worked with that group on compensation priorities. The meetings are facilitated by Mrs. Vesley and myself. And tonight, we are bringing back the recommendations from the budget team for formal approval. And I don't believe we have a large number of budget team representatives, but I believe we have at least one. Mrs. Berg serves on the committee, and I'd like to publicly thank all of our budget team members for the time that they committed from generally 4 to 6. Sometimes the meeting went much later than that as we came together as a work group. So thank you to all who participated in the budget team, as well as the business services team members who helped us run projections and pro formas, who served as non-voting support members to the team. Compensation progress should be viewed over several years. It's not a one-year snapshot, but progress over time. I like to share this slide just as a basis for the work that we've done. Of course, additional funding from the state has made this possible, coupled with our M&O override. Compensation increases in 2022 focused on compression, and then last year, mentioned it last time we had our board meeting, there was a 2-phased approach to compensation increases because the legislature finalized their work in late June after the board had taken action, and you'll see there was a 4% raise on top of the 3% that was previously approved, as well as a $2 an hour increase for eligible employees, so that was significant. And a portion of our eligible staff per statute, governing board approved on who we include, those individuals do receive funding from the Classroom Site Fund. And the percentage increases over the last several years are on this slide for your point of reference. And so with that, on April 27th, we shared progress to date over the last several budget cycles and the work the budget team and administration has done for all of our employee groups. Last fiscal year, that work continued. A main priority was attracting and retaining employees, as well as the expanded use of Classroom Site Fund that the board did approve. The priority of attracting and retaining staff was further supported by the additional funding last June from the legislature. Some of the additional work when we brought the budget team back for 5 additional meetings in the summer is highlighted on this slide. So that's kind of revisiting where we've been, and so where did we start off? Priorities for this year were continuations of years past, and you can see highlighted on this slide the priorities that were managed, that were collected either from prior year budget teams or through employee chats, administration's research, outreach from employees to our HR department. All of those discussion points came together with our ongoing priorities. That included this year banded compression, as well as return to work retirees, stipends, ongoing salary increases to the base, and minimum wage increases that are an ongoing annual consideration, and of course transportation and the challenges we've had hiring and retaining our bus drivers. We also looked at performance and merit pay, as well as counselor compensation and stipends. There were several considerations that we started with. I will just briefly remind the governing board each year there are external and internal factors that we have to consider, including student enrollment, as well as minimum wage, utilities, benefit costs. I know you've seen this many times, but what I do want to highlight here on this next slide, when I presented on the 27th, I shared we had a conservative projection that most districts were using the 2% inflation funding as what we were considering as most likely new funding to the district from M&O to the base support level. And what we do know, and I'll provide a comprehensive update in our legislative report later in the meeting, the legislature has passed a budget and is awaiting the governor's signature. And so you'll see with that final budget, there will be some additional funding opportunities for public school districts. But for tonight, we feel it's important to bring these recommendations based on our conservative projection of 2% inflation funding, continuation of district additional assistance, as well as our 13% override. And then, of course, all of these considerations will be highlighted as well when we propose our budget for next year in June. So again, our budget team and administrative work focused on $7.1 million of initially projected new funding for compensation and other priorities. And I've shared that to date, the budget team and administration has brought 2 recommendations to the board. Just as a reminder, the $500 retention stipend, as well as our medical insurance renewal that took place on April 13th. And so tonight, again, I'm bringing back what we reviewed in detail on April 27th for consideration and approval. The first area for our recommendation is for base compensation, a base compensation increase for all employee groups. And as highlighted on this slide, the budget team and administration are recommending an increase to the base ranging from 3 to 3.5%, depending on the employee's years of service. With the district, that helps us address long-term compression for our most tenured employees, and there's an estimated cost of just over $5.4 million for that increase. The next area was for classroom site fund. Again, I shared at our last meeting that in 2021, the legislature approved the expansion of classroom site fund to include Function 2100 student support service employees, as well as certified teachers, Function 1000, who are in a classroom with a student roster. And our governing board did approve that expansion for fiscal year 2023 as well. And so last year, we highlighted that we did not limit with our budget team work that expansion to certified staff in the newly eligible areas, the Function 2100, but we also included our classified hourly and eligible classified exempt staff. Not many districts did that. We were an outlier, and so that was important, and that resulted in our hourly staff receiving a $2.08 an hour increase, and classified exempt receiving an average increase of $4,376 a year in their compensation. Also, all of the expanded groups became eligible for performance pay at a dollar amount of $2,800. So with our budget work, we have a projection that the Joint Legislative Budget Committee has released their estimates for fiscal year 2024, and we're expecting a 7% increase from $708 per weighted student to $758, and therefore we were working with $2.1 million of additional funding from a budget perspective. Recommendations from the team to administration included the continuation of the optional certified teacher workday that's been in place for a number of years with an estimated cost of $607,641. In addition, a 10% increase to the base pay salary amount from Classroom Site Fund was recommended for eligible staff. That is a portion of the employee's full compensation, so it's not 10% for their entire salary, it's just the portion funded from Classroom Site Fund. The change would result in an average increase of $510.23 a year to teachers who are already receiving Classroom Site Fund dollars. The new estimated average Classroom Site Fund base level compensation would be $5,612.61, with a cost of $3.4 million to the Classroom Site Fund. Administration also previously shared that in 2019, we did have a review and we did change related to Function 2100 and Function 2200 certified positions who had previously been considered eligible for Classroom Site Fund. We moved those employees into M&O at that point in time, held them harmless, but just to note that those individuals are continuing to receive the equivalent amount of funding as if they had still been in Classroom Site Fund for raises, and so we always have to plan for an M&O portion that we project would be for anywhere from $739,000 to $850,000 a year. The review and movement of the expansion of classroom site fund, the review, I should say, in 2019 was before the expansion of classroom site fund. So the irony is some of those employees that we had moved out, you can't put them back in because that would be considered supplanting. And so the cost overall for the increase is $3.4 million. And earlier in the presentation, I highlighted that certified employee salaries, their schedule increased to $48,000 last summer with the new funding from the legislature. And we did note, the budget team did review that did create what we're calling some banded compression, as noted on the slide. I just have teachers on this slide, but on the next slide, you'll see we have function 1,000 teachers and function 2,100 employees. But here, just for discussion purposes, you'll see that banding for some of our newer employees, as well as 6 to 10 year, 11 to 15 year employees. So that was a concern, and the budget team and administration are recommending using Classroom Site Fund as a mechanism to address this banded compression. This recommendation is again for teachers and certified related services, social workers, counselors, all 2,100 employees, as well as classified exempt function 2,100, all of the statutorily eligible exempt employees. The budget team and administration is recommending an increase in the amount ranging from $1,250 to $2,000 to Classroom Site Fund, funded portion of the salaries of these employees who have worked for the district from 4 to 20 years to address the banded compression. The increase will be after the 10% increase to the Classroom Site Fund portion of the employee's annual compensation. And again, this is for teachers function 1,000 and exempt positions function 2,100 only. The estimated cost is $1,978,350. The budget team is also recommending an increase to performance pay from $2,800 to $3,500 for eligible physicians that historically received performance pay on or before July 1st, 2022. So this would include eligible teachers and positions that historically received performance pay before the Classroom Site Fund expansion. The $700 increase will not include the new function 2,100 positions that began to receive Classroom Site Fund in July 1st, 2022 for fiscal year 2023. The estimated cost is $1,448,370 rather. And in addition to the certified teachers function 1,000, here is the list of eligible employees who historically had received performance pay who would be eligible for the increase. A lead counselor stipend of $10,000 is also being recommended from Classroom Site Fund, as well as a new separate counselor's schedule, and the estimated cost is $85,400. And there's also a recommendation with that separate schedule to bring all of the counselors up to the new master's level. And with our next agenda item, Mrs. Vesely will review that in detail with the governing board. And so with that, here's a summary of the projected expenditures for the new spending recommendations. So administrator pay was also discussed, and there's a recommendation to increase performance pay or merit pay for administrators from $2,050 to $2,500 with an estimated cost for M&O of $65,340. Various position requests and reclassifications were also submitted to administration for consideration, and they're detailed in the following slides, highlights of what was approved by administration and the budget team. Various school level and department level requests were reviewed and approved. They're detailed on this slide. The requests benefit academic and district operations to support students and staff. The new positions and reclassifications are estimated to cost $393,287. The minimum wage and bus driver compensation also was a priority for the budget team this year during our meeting process. And you'll recall in 2017, Prop 206 was approved by the Arizona voters, and that started a year-over-year increase with minimum wage. Over the last 7 years, minimum wage has increased from $8.05 to $13.85. It's based on August over August inflation year over year. And so knowing this is an ongoing consideration, administration brought to the governing board in December of 2021 a review of how those minimum wage increases have actually caused our classified hourly placement schedule to collapse, where there used to be a spread between grades for different positions. Those increases caused the grades to actually group. So pretty soon you lost that spread. So we recommended let's bring that back. And it lasted 1 year because we went from $12.80 an hour minimum wage to $13.85, in part because inflation was so high in August of 2022 compared to August of 2021. I can say the reports that came out this week, inflation is now at 4.9%. So it is coming down, and with that, we don't think the minimum wage increase will be as dramatic as it was last year, but it is something that we're planning for. But with that, we also felt it was important to look at where we had made progress in December of 2021, putting the spread back, if you will, looking at the collapsing of the minimum wage grades again, because there was the jump from $12.80 to $13.85. And so we're recommending that we put that spread back and continue to look year over year at adjusting the differential between each grade for each employee position. And Mrs. Vesley will bring that schedule to you in the next agenda item. Bus driver recruiting and retention is still a challenge, as we've shared over the last year. And as it stands at this point, you can see where Peoria Unified fares compared to other districts. What we've done in recent years is we did in the fall of 2021 increase our bus driver pay from $13 to $17 an hour. But if we go back to this slide, the minute we did that, within a few months, other districts moved. So it's almost one district has progress, the next has progressed, and you have that same level of competition. So the budget team does recommend that we increase our bus driver salary schedule from the $17 an hour with 10 years experience to $19 an hour. So that's a recommendation included with the budget work from the budget team for consideration this evening. And retirees, return to work, Kids Zone, community preschool, and hourly employees were also addressed. I shared it at our last meeting on April 27th that current employees of the district who retire from Peoria Unified can work for a third-party vendor. We use ESI as a contracted employee for a year and then return and be employed by the district. That 1 year vendor status, if you will, is required for that employee to be eligible for their retirement benefits from Arizona State Retirement System. I did provide to the governing board an update in our Friday report sharing information on ASRS and how that works as a defined benefit plan for public entities, including school districts, universities, municipalities, state agencies, and other similar employers. And so we currently, for many years, have had a policy that when we hire back a retiree, they're brought back at 80% of their salary, their last salary, with the third-party contractor, less ACR. That's an alternative contribution rate because they're a retiree, they're not paying in the full ASRS employee amount. And it's a recommendation from the budget team that effective July 1st, that our return-to-work retirees going to work for ESI or returning to Peoria Unified would receive 90% of the employee's last Peoria Unified salary, less the alternative contribution rate. Last summer, the governing board approved the district using a DES Child Care Stabilization Grant to support fiscal year 2023 classified hourly Kids Zone and community preschool and developmental preschool staff to receive a temporary $2 increase. Those programs have struggled to hire qualified workers, and so we had that $2 increase. They also had approval to use a recruiting and retention stipend totaling $2,500. That grant funding's sunsetting this summer, but the budget team felt it was important that those employees should be held harmless and not lose the $2 that they received for the year from the grant. And so the continuation of the $2 increase is being recommended by the budget team to be funded from the respective Kids Zone, community preschool, and community education funds that are supported through fees and fund balance that's built up as a result of the grants that we had over the last year. Other compensation recommendations, I highlighted these last time the governing board met, but you can see there are a number of additional stipends being recommended for Spanish immersion, an increase for the certified extra duty. The $25 amount has been in place for many, many years, increasing to $35. Summer school classified rate of pay is being recommended that the rate for summer work be for the employee same position or the beginning rate of a similar position for work outside of the employee's current job, as well as increasing medical supervision of games for our classified exempt at $35 an hour. Also looking at an increase from $13.85 to $15 an hour for classified certified auxiliary workers and lifeguards. And then lastly, a series of athletic high school coaching schedule structure changes. And again, Mrs. Vesley will be capturing a number of these changes in the schedules she'll be bringing forward for consideration in the next board agenda item. And so with that, we started with $7.1 million of estimated funding, and you can see how the various recommendations and fixed and variable cost expenditures are being addressed by the district. This is again before the final budget recommendations came through the legislature pending the governor's signature. Ongoing priorities, and similar to last year, when the funding was finalized in late June and the budget team had already brought recommendations to administration and the board had taken action in May, we brought the budget team back to look at the final budget amounts, one-time ongoing increases, and administration is currently still analyzing what that final budget will look like, but there is the possibility we may ask the budget team to come back to look at the final budget amounts from the state and how that impacts Peoria Unified, and if there would be any additional recommendations in the area of compensation. That is still to be determined. So tonight we're bringing forward the recommendations as they were presented on the 27th with our initial funding projections. I mentioned the AEL is still a concern last time we met. I can share with the legislature's budget that's pending the governor's approval. There's a one-year override for the AEL next year. So that is very important to public school district. It removes that risk of billions of dollars of funding being removed from school districts' expenditure budgets in the last quarter of the school year and the fiscal year. So even though I have it on this slide because we put this presentation out before the legislature approved their budget, if the budget is approved by the governor, the AEL would be overridden for next year. And so with that, that concludes the presentation from both April 27th and again tonight. And I will ask the governing board to consider the recommendations for approval this evening. Thank you.
Ms. Myers, thank you. We do have some public comment tied to this line item, so we'll listen to that and then we'll get into board member questions and comments. Thank you. All right, same rules apply, 3 minutes per individual. First public comment tied to this line item comes from Vanessa Aslan Blair.
Thank you, Superintendent, Governing Board, and Cabinet. So Mr. Rogers has said to look for the helpers. I look over and I see the helpers. I look around and I see the helpers. The world has been in chaos with all the politics, and I applaud the helpers and the doers that make our schools great. God has most assuredly blessed this district and the helpers that fight every day for all the students. The doers, the business office, HR, safety team, teachers, the list goes on. What I see is an award-winning business office and on their transparency and dedication to our staff and students. Ms. Myers knows how to run a budget. She knows how to spend money, and we all know that money spent on lawsuits is not money well spent. Finding fiscally sound ways to help our students and staff, that's what these helpers do. Let's help with Ms. Myers and our business office. Let them do their jobs. We've had enough with all of the negativity. Parents should not be pulling their students. I'm a parent of a 6th grade girl and boy. I am proud that we attend Peoria Unified. I am proud to say that I know every available dollar is spent on facilities, teachers, and that is good for our kiddos. I know that Ms. Myers and her team is amazing, and I encourage the board to unanimously approve this. Not doing so would cause a huge issue for our kiddos. All of our students every day, we need our students and our staff and all of this that needs to be funded. Please vote unanimous.
Thank you. Next public comment comes from Ms. Trina Berg.
Good evening again, President Sandoval, members of the board. I'm going to take just a moment to let everyone know that Ironwood's boys volleyball advanced to the state championships tonight, so we are super excited about our boys. All right, so that happened a little bit ago, sorry. I am here, I represent the budget committee. I sit on that committee. I've sat on that committee for a long time. Once again, I'm asking that this board vote unanimously to approve this budget recommendation. To vote no on this budget recommendation because you are irritated or upset about a previous vote that occurred or happened is basically telling our staff, all of our staff, every single employee in this district, that your salary and your benefit or your salary increases, all the different increases that we're looking at, are contingent, that they're being held hostage, that it is a bribery to feel exactly the way you feel. And if we don't feel the way that you do, that our pay should be impacted. And that is not a message to send to all of our employees. That is not the message we want to send. Our increases, everyone always says, oh, we give money to the schools and it doesn't make it to the teachers. And we're literally telling you exactly how we spent every dollar down to $4,000. And it went to our increases. It went to some shifting and adjusting to kind of increase pay all around the entire district. The money is going where we want it to go. We're not doing anything malicious or anything. And we need to send the message that attraction, retainment of our staff is important because that was a goal of yours. But again, to vote no and say, I can't support this budget because I'm irritated about this other thing that occurred, you're holding our pay hostage, you're holding our increases hostage, and that is a wrong message to send. This vote needs to be unanimous. And again, if you cannot vote yes, then abstain. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berg. Ms. Myers, that was the final public comment tied to this line item. Board members, questions, comments? Ms. Hill.
Yes, I actually have a question for you with regard to performance pay. I know, I think it was mentioned on page 32 that the increase is going from 2,800 to 3,500. And I was wondering if you might be able to give me some information as to what that looks like. I mean, generally speaking, if you were out in any other job besides government, if it was a performance pay adjustment and an increase, that would be because the principal maybe sat down with the teacher, evaluated that teacher, and determined that they deserve to get the performance pay. So I'm wondering, is this just seniority, or do they actually have to go through some sort of process to actually qualify to receive the performance pay?
Thank you, President Sandoval, Mrs. Hill. There is a process, and in fact, I'll ask Mrs. Vesley to speak to that in a moment. We do actually bring that process to the governing board every year in December for review and approval. Mrs. Vesley, would you like to share what that process is?
Yes, thank you. President Sandoval, members of the board, the performance pay is tied to every individual's yearly evaluation. It is part of the evaluation system and process that we have in place. Our certified staff and our classified staff are creating student learning objectives. Our classified staff might be working alongside a grade level or a content area, or even within their office staff or the nurses department, and they could be creating task-driven goals that might align to an overall school-wide goal. And so at the end of the year, through the evaluation process, part of the final evaluation is taking the complete evaluation, their effectiveness rating, looks at the SLO, their self-assessment, and takes all of that into account to allow the individual to earn up to currently $2,800. And it depends on how they do on their student learning objective. They'll do a pre-test, they'll do teaching, and they'll do a post-test to show growth. So it is growth-driven and part of the full evaluation.
Great. So it actually sounds like that would be something that's comparable, which is good, that we actually do provide performance pay depending on how they actually performed within the classroom site. So that's excellent. So I'm glad to hear that, and I'm assuming that there would obviously be some people that would not receive anything for performance pay, correct?
President Sandoval, Mrs. Hill, that is correct. There are instances where employees have not received their performance pay, and there's actually a state requirement when using classroom site funds to have a performance pay plan in place. That's why we bring it to the governing board each year. And so this structure has existed for many years in Peoria Unified, and other districts follow a similar process.
Okay, great. Well, I'm glad to hear that because, like I said, I think it's performance pay to me has to be earned because that's above and beyond. It's basically like a bonus, which is great. And I think if you've earned it, you definitely should get it. The other question I had for you was on, I guess, for the retirees on page 48 with regard to, I guess this one just always comes back for me personally. Right now, it's set at 80% for their rate of pay as they return after they've taken a year off of retirement. I guess the only issue I guess I kind of have with this is, I guess I don't get it. I'm thinking, so if you want to be a teacher and you want to work, you retire at age 50, you take a year off, you come back, you're double dipping. So I don't quite understand how we can make sure we don't have people abuse this loophole. Because if you're smart, right, you retire at 50, you take a year off, you come back, now you get your pension, you get 90% possibly. I don't quite understand how that's encouraging people to, stay within the system, And
if I may, President Sandoval, Mrs. Hill, members of the governing board, I think you may be referring to an early retirement criteria that ASRS does have, but I can say, and anyone can look at the ASRS website to see what the time frame is for any public employee, again, universities, cities, state agencies, as well as school districts, including a number of charter schools. It's oftentimes 30 years before they've earned that benefit. It's a defined benefit plan, and it's meant to be used in conjunction with 401ks or other investment vehicles, as well as Social Security. It's not at the employee's full salary, it's a percentage, and you have to work a number of years to get that higher percentage. So if someone was in the system and retired at age 50, they would not be receiving an annual benefit anywhere close to what they were receiving as an employee, just as a point of clarification.
So you're saying it's usually for them to receive the full amount would be a 30-year period of time. So if they, started when they were 25 out of college, then they would be 55. So basically could retire at 55 with, a full pension, take a year off, come back. I'm just trying to make sure, because to me, the 50s, that's young to be able to retire. And most of the people that I know that are teachers, many of them retire in their 50s. So it's very common. And to go back and utilize tax dollars for the pension, and then also utilize possibly upwards almost 90%, it's just a lot of taxpayer dollars. I'm just trying to understand. I realize that we are under the guise of the government to do what we're supposed to do with this circumstance, but I'm very hesitant to raise the amount from 80 to 90% because they're already getting the pension too.
Yeah. And if I may clarify the alternative contribution rate, so actually it's an employee contribution before retirement as well as an employer for the actual employee, not a retiree. And then when the retired individual comes back, it's that percentage less the ACR. So there's actually not a taxpayer component to that other than the salary piece that we would incur hiring, be it a non-retiree or a retiree. So the contribution to ASRS is an employee portion of their salary as well as the employer contribution prior to retirement.
Well, I guess I'm going to wrap this big bow on it because, and I've referred to this before, I have a lot of family that are teachers, so I kind of know a little bit of how it works. And My mom retired in her 50s and probably ran through her pension within about 10 years or so, and then we're on taxpayer dollars. And then she's 80 years old now. So the taxpayers are still going to have to pay at some point when the monies that they put into the retirement pension plan run out.
Yeah, actually, it's the membership in ASRS that continues to fund the retirement defined benefit plan. But again, it's a state level, state law, number, not just school districts participate.
Oh, no, I understand that. I'm just trying to make sure that people understand that that's still taxpayers' dollars that we're talking about. So whether it came from the federal or from the state, so I'm just trying to make sure because.
President Sandoval, I
Yeah.
want a point of order. If it's very distracting, we understand you're upset, but it's very distracting. We're trying to listen to the conversations between Board Member Rebecca Hill and Mrs. Myers, and it's distracting in the audience when you're whispering and getting kind of loud.
Yeah, I'm just trying to wrap my head around it too, and a lot of it is just to inform the public as well, because tax dollars are relevant, and definitely for people that have retired, they continue to receive even after their pension has run out. So if they're coming back early, then they're using that earlier than later, and it still affects taxpayer dollars at some point. So I'm just, making that point. But like I said, 80 to 90% seems steep to me. I think 80 is very generous personally. But.
Thank you, Mrs. Hill. Dr. Sorensen.
I'm not going to repeat my comments from last time regarding ASRS and pensions, but I will say I hope anyone who's willing to vote no on this tells the bus drivers who came here and spoke about their lack of compensation, go out to the bus yard, tell those drivers, tell those workers, tell our cafeteria workers, tell our food handlers, tell our instructional assistants that they don't deserve that pay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. Mrs. Rooks.
Yes, well, thank you, Dr. Sorensen, for making some comments. That's kind of a change. So excuse me, I am speaking, so please refrain. Okay, so for me, the only thing on here is I do appreciate the bus driver pay increase because I do think that our bus drivers deserve that. I also believe that looking at that compression for the teachers, because there have been a lot of teachers who have been upset with the pay and the compression, and they are wanting to leave the district. I've heard many, many of them that are wanting to leave because of the pay. So I appreciate that. The only problem I have in here is that the classroom site funds, yes, the legislation voted to make that, but it's not a requirement. It was supposed to be for teacher compensation increases. And when we are facing a situation of teachers leaving to go to other districts surrounding us for pay increases, I just want to make it clear that I don't support the classroom site funds being used to pay social workers on top of the grant funding that they're getting for the salary. So I just want to make that comment. That's the only thing I have to say.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. Mrs. Ewing.
I want to say thank you for putting all of this together. I really want to also say thank you to the budget team. There's quite this proposal is being put forth with a lot of input, and I appreciate all of that. I would say that if we end up having any extra funds going forward, I'd love to see more for the bus drivers. But I'm in full support of this, and I appreciate all the hard work to you, your team, and all of the individuals on the budget team as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Aside from repeating what I said last time as well, I mean, I can't think of a better way to value and support. There's a lot of value, right, to bringing back our retired associates and showing them how much we appreciate their willingness to continue, right, to, again, lift up our youth. I think there's value in them mentoring our young teachers that are coming in, and there's value from the institutional knowledge perspective as well. So I know this is something that, I absolutely, have actually pushed for, for some time. So, I appreciate us going in this direction to again, take a people first mindset, which does impact, the quality of our classrooms as well. So it is really just one of the many things that we can continue to do to make sure that all of our associates feel inspired and come to work every day just with a sense of, again, value as an individual. So thank you for that. Before we move on, I just want to make a quick statement. Look, there's a lot of emotions in this room. It's been like this for some time. It is hard enough getting through a board meeting with our, some of the things that take place in the audience, et cetera. But from a board member perspective, we all come from different lenses, and I absolutely appreciate that. But I also want to make sure that as board members, we also respect and the opinions of others, and certainly sit in the seat in a way that's very civil and just models the ability to get through these conversations in a very productive and respectful way. I think that's important not only for us to run effectively, but also it's good modeling for our students as well. So thank you for that. All right. Any more questions, comments, time to this line item? That said, I do need a motion to approve administration's budget recommendations, including the compensation increase for the 2023-2024 fiscal year. Ms. Contra, before we get a motion on that, Ms. Meyer, I just want to say one more thing. As we take a look at, the classroom site fund and, the 2,100 to 2,200 categories, one of the things that I would ask is, when it comes down where a particular title isn't going to realize the increase because of the classification, but their scope of work is aligned with those who are, just be great for the district to kind of consider alternatives to be able to lift the bump as well. And specifically, I brought them up last time, the curriculum instruction coaches and our administrative assistants as well. I know there's some secretaries that didn't fall within that category as well. So thank you for that. So that said, I do need a motion to approve 10.3. The administration's budget recommendations, including the compensation increases for the 2023-2024 fiscal year. I'll move that we approve the administration's budget recommendations, including the compensation increases for the 2023-2024 fiscal year.
I will second that.
Ms. Contra, we have a motion made by myself and a second by Mrs. Ewing. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes with 5 yeas. Thank you, board members. All right, moving on to 10.4, Peoria Unified Salary Schedules and Extra Duty Special Assignment Salary Schedules for the 2023-2024 school year. Especially, just FYI, we do have public comment tied to this line item. So after you go, we'll listen to public comment and then board's questions and comments.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, it's getting late.
Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the board. Tonight, I'm bringing forth the 2023-2024 initial salary schedules that represent all of the work that the budget team has put forth tonight and the recommendations that you just voted on. So first of all, thank you to each and every one of you for voting for the recommendations of the compensation that we just brought forward. Again, our budget team did a phenomenal job in bringing forth great ideas, having great discussions. Again, I want to thank Mrs. Myers for leading the charge. And I want to thank, again, every employee group, classified, related services, certified, administrative. Over 35 people came and gave hours upon hours. And because of their work and because of your vote tonight, I'm able to bring forth the initial salary schedules that are in front of you. The ones that I wanted to highlight, there are not many changes to the salary schedules, except where you see performance pay. So we've noted they're going to get the $2,500 for administrators, or they're going to get the $3,500 for some of the certified staff, or the $2,800 for those that are in classroom site fund. As well as you will also notice on the salary schedules that there's a bullet point on many of them that talks about going to ESI when you retire. That was changed to now reflect the 90% less the ACR. When employees come back to Peoria, we look at bringing it back at 90% less ACR, or that of a new hire, which would be the initial salary schedule, whichever one is greater. I do want to take a look at, there is one new salary schedule that was just board approved. It is for our high school counselors. Could we please pull up the school counselor? It's right up in the middle. Up right there, thank you. This is a brand new initial salary schedule that the budget committee discussed. And as we shared earlier, all of our school counselors must have a master's degree. And so we felt it was important that we looked to create a separate salary schedule for them that reflected that starting salary. We got the starting salary off of the certified initial salary schedule. So we looked at that master level. We created a salary schedule that starts there. And we do have some counselors that are between the 48 and 50,000. So when we've had all of those increases with the certified salary schedule in the past, and we've now increased it, we do have some of those counselors that fall below this minimum. So with the vote that you have just previously voted on in looking at this initial salary schedule, this will help us to bring all school counselors at least up to the minimum, which would be the $50,192. It's also going to help us for retention purposes as well as attracting, because many times when we are looking to hire school counselors, they may not always understand that they have to look at the certified initial salary schedule. So this is just going to help us attract more counselors that we know we need. You'll see on here that we've also added that school counselors and they do receive 7 additional days per year. The lead school counselor will receive 30 additional days. That's been something that's been in effect for many years. It's not anything new. And the lead school counselors will also now receive that $10,000 stipend that you've just approved. Josh, could we please go to the initial salary schedule for classified hourly? Again, here, if you remember back to Ms. Meyer's presentation a few minutes ago, we did have from grades 5 through 11, when the minimum wage went up in January, they were all at $13.85. So we did put the spread back in that was taken to the budget team, and the budget team felt that it was very important that we continue to bring that spread back. So you'll see those changes in red here that are reflective of the previous presentation. And then if we go to the transportation salary schedule, you will also see the same pieces that we've just approved. We have now starting the salary at $19 an hour, and you'll see that new spread as well. If we can now go to the coaching and extra duty activities. It's going to be down at the bottom. Revised coaching and extra right there. Thank you. This is a supplemental salary schedule that has a lot of our coaching activities on. You'll see different stipends throughout the year that certified staff may be eligible for. And many of these changes are coming out of work from our our athletic director, Mr. Ernster, as well as small work groups. And what we're trying to do here is to bring a little bit of clarity and consistency to our naming convention. So a lot of the changes might just be a name change. Anything in green was an add. So for example, you'll see the football JV coach, we're adding one, but we're also taking away in some areas. So when we look at all of those changes, that again, it's to bring some clarity. It's to also look to bring consistency from girls' sports and boys' sports, and making sure that from one school to the other, those naming conventions are going to be the same. We did reduce a couple of areas. You'll see the athletic trainer. We are now going to call it athletic trainer versus head, and we've gone from 2 down to 1 because most schools have not been using the full 2. And so we've been able to now repurpose. One of the areas that we did add on was the volleyball freshman coach for boys. We have not had a freshman boys volleyball coach, and it is gaining in popularity, as we've heard tonight, with Ironwood, their volleyball team. And so due to some Title IX concerns, we felt it was important that we also had a freshman boys volleyball coach, and so that was an add as well. When we go and look through to page 6, you'll see many of these areas that we've highlighted in red. Thank you. Are items that we brought to the board in July when we knew that we were going to be struggling in hiring teachers. The extra sections for elementary have been utilized this year when we did not have a teacher in a classroom. And I know that our elementary teachers have been very appreciative of the opportunity to earn the extra section pay when they were covering during their prep and covering for possibly a different grade level or a different content area. We also have the extra student stipend. So this is when we may be in that situation again next year where we've gone over the max plus 2, that we're able to offer a stipend just to support the teachers, and especially if we're trying to post but we can't find a teacher. I know our teachers have been appreciative. It is a lot to have maximum plus 2, so giving a little bit extra to, again, let our teachers know that we are supporting them, trying to make sure that they're feeling support when we may not have a teacher to help cover in that grade level. And then we also would like to keep on the voluntary incentive to move. So right now we're in the voluntary transfer process. That's going to close on June 1st. And after June 1st, we don't make any more changes. If we get into a situation where we have to close a section and move a teacher to help cover some of those openings, last year we did give $5,000 per year after June 1 to move a teacher. We then offered to have that teacher go back to the site, provided that there was an opening for them. I can tell you this year we did move about 19 teachers. We did offer the $5,000 stipend. We did offer for them to go back to their home school. I believe one person chose and wanted to go back to their home school. So I know that this was, while it was difficult and while we might have to make some of those changes, we want to be ready and we want to be prepared should we have to make those changes again. We also had the rescue sub continuation. So through ESI this past year, we had the opportunity to have a rescue sub on every site. We paid out $155 per day. Not every site was able to get a rescue sub, but it is available for every site to do that. That person, that sub, then goes to that school every single day, or they may go to 2 schools, and they are there covering classes or whatever the needs might be. And it's been a huge success. We have administrators already asking if we're going to keep that in place for next year. So it is the recommendation, due to the fact that we still are seeing a low sub fill rate throughout this year, that we would like to keep that in place. Right now our sub fill rate is about 80%. It's been fluctuating anywhere between 60 up to about 87%. I'd like to get it into the 90s, 95, 93. So there's still a need, in our opinion, to have the rescue sub available. And then we've also been this year working with some of our classified staff who might have a bachelor's degree or who might be in a program, and we have been emergency certifying them as they finish their programs. That is allowable by Arizona Department of Ed. And when we have a classified person and we need to use them in the classroom, they have been getting $5 an hour more when they're used in the classroom. And that equals out to about the rate of pay of a substitute for that daily rate. We would like to be able to continue that. I don't know that we would have the funding right now to pay for their certificate, but we had last year and in years past paid for their certificate through ESSER funds. But because the ESSER funds are not going to be available very soon, we may not be able to do that. But we would like to at least offer, if they have the certificate or they're willing to pay for the emergency certificate, that we would be able to use them in the classroom on those emergency bases. So I'd like to place them on this schedule, asking for your approval to continue the work that we put forth in July. If we go to the hourly and special assignments, salary schedule is going to be probably at the bottom again. Thank you. The changes that you see here are the changes, again, that has come forth from the budget team, moving the $25 an hour to $35 an hour. So you'll see that consistently throughout. We've also changed where we might have the classified rate of pay instead of having it that minimum rate for summer school, that they could earn the same amount that they're making this year in their typical job, or if they were going to another job. So for example, if we had an assistant that was going to go and do custodial work at summer school, they would get the rate of pay of the custodian. But if they're going in, they're an assistant during the year and they're going to go and be an assistant in summer school, they would get their same rate of pay. You'll also see on the third page that we have changed the auxiliary athletics to $15 an hour, as we did for the lifeguard, which also came through the budget team. So those are the major changes. And again, these are the initial salary schedules. And at this time, if there aren't any other questions, I'd like to ask that we approve the 23-24 salary schedules.
Thank you, Ms. Vesely. Like I stated earlier, we do have a couple public comments tied to this line item, so we'll listen to them and then get into board members' questions and comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, again, same rules apply, 3 minutes per individual. First public comment tied to this line item comes from Ms. Trina Berg.
Good evening again, President Sandoval. Once again, I'm just asking for a unanimous vote on this. This is affecting a lot of our classified staff who really just need this. This is a good push forward. I do want to say, Ms. Hill, at the last board meeting, you had mentioned coaches' pay. And I agree with you. We definitely need to work on coaches' pay. It's been forever. I don't remember the last time we did anything about coaches' pay. And that needs to be a priority at some point, but this is a good start. It's pushing us forward. We did a lot of changes. We shifted things around. And once again, I think this needs to be a unanimous vote to show all of our staff that are involved in these extra duty things that we do, that their work is appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berg. All right, final public comment tied to this line item comes from Christina Tooby. Welcome back.
I think I messed up, but that's okay. So just go with it. Smile and nod. Good evening, President Sandoval, governing board members, Dr. Reynolds. Again, my name is Christina Tooby. I come to you as a member of the Peoria community and an educator in PUSD. I want to thank actually Ms. Brooks for the last comment when she said that she did recognize there's a gap. I am one of those banded, gapped employees, and I have been fighting all year to fix my pay so that I'm actually making pay that is worth, I feel what I'm worth anyway. But as community members, we know that educators are not being compensated appropriately for the amount of work done and the expertise that they have. and the education required is worth more than the dollar figure Arizona has put to it. I'm discouraged as an educator in this district that my support during some of the most critical times was not rewarded or valued. PUSD has put more money and effort into incentivizing inexperienced educators to come into the district. Sadly, the district has used the new teacher hire salary as compensation against other districts. I ask that the board and our administrative team to compare how other districts compensate years of experience and education. You guys are missing the big education piece of it. And how we value the experience that we have here in PUSD. Thank you, and I do apologize. I do realize it was supposed to go with the one before, and I'm sorry. I just wanted to say.
Thank you, Ms. Tooby. Appreciate your time. Board members, any questions, comments for Ms. Fesley? Ms. Hill?
I actually think it's not a bad idea to adjust our pay scale for a lot of the staff that we have at PUSD. The compression has been a really serious issue with particular regard to the raise in minimum wage, because that has caused significant problems, not just for PUSD, but for everyone. And the price of everything has gone up. It's been hard. And the compression is tough because we have to separate everybody out. So I completely understand the compression, and it is wrong to have, two different groups of people, one that has more experience, possibly more education, to be very close to someone who's a new hire in pay. So I completely understand that, and I do think we should fix that. That is not appropriate. So I do think that a lot of what we're doing for the teachers and trying to space out and adequately pay per their abilities, their skill sets, and what they actually have as far as their educational background makes sense. And that would lead us to where we're at with the budget. So I thank you for that.
Thank you, Mrs. Hill. Dr. Swartzen?
No, sir.
Mrs. Rooks?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of, go off of Rebecca because, again, I've heard a lot of teachers that are wanting to go to surrounding districts because their expertise, their level of teaching, their education, the years of service, they're paying more in the surrounding districts than here. So I think that needs to be reevaluated because I don't want to lose those teachers. With them leaving and going to surrounding districts, I just think that needs to be reevaluated, especially since the certified initial salary placement, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but it didn't seem like it changed a whole lot from the last time. So I just think that we do need to reevaluate that because just the education level that they have, many years of service, and the work that they put into teaching our kids, I think that we need to really look at how can we keep them here with their salary.
May I just add, Mr. Sandoval, Mrs. Rooks, we do look at the other large districts that are in comparison to Peoria Unified, as well as our neighboring districts. We were last year when we raised it to $48,000. We were right about in the middle. We did look at recommendations to our budget team to look at around 50 to 52. The budget team felt that 48 was a good start. And we are right in the middle with the other districts. They were afraid that it was going to cause a lot more banded compression that we're seeing with our current staff. So we continue to look at that every year. I've already been in conversations with Mesa Unified. I sit on the ASPEC Executive Board, and we're all talking about how do we work with compensation and how do we look at when we increase the initial salary schedule, what are other districts doing for those current employees? So that is always something that we continue to do. We'll continue to bring forward. The budget team felt this year that because we had raised to $48,000 and prior to that $40,000, that there were other areas that we needed to focus on, but that will be a priority again to bring back as we bring all priorities back. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fesley. Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. Mrs. Ewing.
Thank you, and I appreciate that you're looking at the other districts to make sure that we're being competitive with the resources that we have, because I know other districts have different funding than we do, so it's not always an easy, equal comparison. So I really appreciate that, and I appreciate that you guys brought back the rescue subs. As I was out on each one of the campuses, each one of the campuses really talked a lot about how helpful they've been, and so I appreciate that. But I'm in agreement, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into providing this. Thank you.
Thank you. If I might add, that is true when we look at additional funding sources in other districts. Other districts do have a 15% override, which allows them to give a lot more of that compensation and raises, and especially in the initial salary schedule. We here in Peoria currently have a 13%.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Mrs. Vesely, yeah, it's again, just thank you for the intentionality, as you continue to go to the table each year to ensure that we're lifting up our associates and valuing them in the way that they deserve. So I know we continue to go in the right direction. I do appreciate the multiple lenses that are part of this process as well. So, let's keep doing that. But, thank you. I appreciate it. We've gone through public comments. So now, if no further board member questions or comments, I do need a motion to approve the Peoria Unified Salary Placement Schedules, Coaching and Extra Duty Activity Schedule, and the Hourly Special Assignment Schedule for the 2023-2024 school year as presented.
I will motion to approve the Peoria Unified Salary Placement Schedules, Coaching and Extra Duty Activity Schedules, and the Hourly Special Assignment Schedule for the 2023-2024 school year as presented.
I will second.
Ms. Concho, we have a motion made by Mrs. Ewing and a second by Mrs. Hill. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes with 4 yeas and 1 abstention. Thank you, board members.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vesely. All right, we have no discussion items this evening, so we will move down to informational reports. 12.1, report on upcoming meetings and events. Ms. Zeri.
Nothing to add this evening, President Sandoval.
All right, thank you. 12.2, legislative, state, and local updates. Ms. Myers.
Well, thank you. Good evening again, President Sandoval, members of the Governing Board, and Dr. Reynolds. On Wednesday, May 10th, the legislature passed the $17.8 billion budget package that is awaiting the governor's signature for fiscal year 2024. Budget highlights include kids' care expansion, transportation infrastructure project funding, increased funding for the Housing Trust Fund, homelessness shelter services, and a one-time tax rate rebate for certain eligible taxpayers. Administration is still reviewing the budget details, but some of the major items related to education include $368 million for statewide school facilities, including building renewal grants, new school construction, and in-person school building inspections. The state budget also includes $300 million of one-time state aid funding for districts and charters that can be used for M&O and/or capital, a 2.92% increase in the base level for the funding formula, as well as an increase in transportation per mile amounts. There is also a 9.38% district additional assistance or capital funding increase. And in addition to these increases to the formula, the proposed state budget includes an additional $36 million in one-time investments in dual enrollment classes, music supplies, E-rate, and other programs. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, a major part of the budget plan provides an override for the aggregate expenditure limit for fiscal year 2024, which would prevent billions of dollars of funding cuts, over $1 billion rather, in funding cuts to school districts next year if that override had not taken place. And so we expect the budget may be finalized this week, and administration will provide an update to the governing board on the final budget highlights in an upcoming Friday report, as well as next steps for the district. And thank you. That concludes my report this evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Myers. All right, moving on to 12.3, Budget, Facilities, Planning, and Construction Reports. This report is on the district's website for your viewing at your convenience. Other business, 13.1, Board Member Opportunity to Readdress Agenda Items. Ms. Hill, any items that you'd like to readdress this evening?
No, thank you.
Dr. Sorensen?
No, sir.
Mrs. Rooks?
No, thank you.
Mrs. Ewing?
No, thank you.
I don't have any either. Moving on to 13.2, requests for agenda items for future governing board meetings. Mrs. Hill, any items?
Yes, actually, I would like to request an opportunity for us to make some adjustments and maybe improvements to our schools. And in doing so, I know that there was a House Bill 2008, which was with regard to basically civics test that would be performed for the seniors at the high school level to a pass-fail, whether they should receive their diploma. And I would like to motion that we consider the idea of giving equivalency tests at every level, 1st through 12th, to focus mostly on English and math so that we can catch problems early before we wait until they get to 12th grade. I realize with 12th grade with the House Bill 2008, that's with regard to a civics test, that's basically social studies, but I actually thought, you know, that's a great idea. I mean, we can actually address it at each level and then, you know, let those kids move on that pass and that don't. Maybe we need to readdress and catch these problems before it gets bad. So I think we should consider equivalency tests at 1st through 12th grade. So I move to create equivalency tests for 1st through 12th grade classes.
And,
Go
and
ahead,
we don't
Dr.
need a
Ennis.
motion on that.
What's that?
You don't need to move. Right?
Yeah, no, we
You can
just
just
need a second,
propose
but, I
that.
mean,
We
are
just
you
need-
clear on the
I
ask?
believe so, yes.
Okay.
I will second.
Mrs. Hill, any other items?
That is it. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Dr. Sorensen, any items?
No, sir.
Mrs. Rooks?
Yeah, I have just two. First is I would like to, in relation to what was brought up, policy BG, I would like to request that the privacy policy that was handed to, I believe, Ms. Contra over there to give to us, to be added to the May 22nd board meeting to vote on as a board in relation to the governing board policy BG.
I will second.
Good. You had a second item?
Yes, I just want to make sure I gave enough time to Ms. Contra. The second one I'd like to have a discussion because I feel like there needs to be a history discussion of when this kind of all occurred, but on the involvement of the practice of the bathroom situation, like when it began, the practice, what was put forward, what was discussed, what was presented through the district, because I feel like there's a lot of, I guess, discussion that could be had to see what was actually going on, because I feel like it's just all over the place. So I'd like to have just a discussion on kind of that piece of the practice that was going on with the bathrooms.
So that's it. I mean, would a Friday report initially be sufficient? And then for if any questions outside of that, we can.
I mean, Friday report's fine to start with, but I would also like for it to be at a future board meeting, just as a discussion as a board, to be able to kind of ask questions in the administration to see what was, I guess, has been going on for the past year, 2 years, whatever, how long it was going.
Gotcha. Dr. Reynolds, do you have questions on that? It looks like you might. No?
I will second.
And that was it.
Okay. Mrs. Ewing?
I don't have anything, thank you.
No, you're welcome. All right, I know I still have a laundry of items that are outstanding, so, you know, we'll take a look at that spreadsheet and see if we can bring those forward. So I do not have any additional items this evening. That said, Moving on to 14.1, adjournment. I do need a motion to adjourn this meeting at 9:23 PM.
I move that we move to motion to end this meeting at 9:23 PM.
I will second.
Ms. Concho, I have a motion made by Mrs. Rooks and a second by Mrs. Hill. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes with 5 yeas. Thank you, board members. Good night, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening.